Okay, we're live.
Okay, so good morning everybody. Welcome to today's People's Scrutiny Committee. The first item on the agenda is to elect a chair. Please can I have nominations for a chair?
I nominate Jackie.
Microphone, Councillor Powell.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry. I nominate Jackie Strong.
Okay, do we have a seconder?
Me. I was just about to. I've just put my hand up in the chat to say I was going to nominate, but that's fine. I'll second.
Okay, and I saw other hands of support, so that's great. Do we have any other nominations? No? Okay, thank you. I welcome Councillor Jackie Strong to be the chair for this year, and then we'll move on to appointing a vice chair in a second. So just give us a second to let Councillor Strong take her position.
Thanks all, and welcome to the People Committee. It's Tuesday the 17th of June, and our next item is the appointment of a vice chair. Have we got any nominations? I see Councillor Bond has got her hand up.
Thank you. I'd like to nominate Councillor Sue Riley, please.
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that, Chair.
Any other nominations? No? So are we all in agreement that Councillor Riley is the vice chair? I see a lot of hands up. Thank you very much. So Councillor Sue Riley is vice chair of this committee, so thanks for that. So Sorry, I just switched myself off. So we move on to the next item of business, which is apologies for absence.
Okay, Chair, so we've got Councillor Peter Strong substituting Councillor Stevens, and I believe we've got another substitution.
We've got Jill
substituting Councillor Grockett.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest?
I'm sorry, I can't lower my hand at the minute. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Oh, it's gone now. Sorry.
Councillor Jones?
Yes, I have a declaration of interest for the second item. No, for this item, sorry. I'm muddled as well now. I'm a member of the Aneurin Bevan Health Board. I'm an independent member, but so I do not think I have a prejudicial interest, but I will fill in the appropriate forms.
Thank you very much for that. Any other declarations of interest? Not that I can see. Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Butler?
Just to let you know that I sit on FLICE, but I do not think that's a prejudicial interest. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Oh, sorry, I think I ought to, sorry, Chair, me again. I think I ought to declare as well, then, as Jan has, I sit on FLICE, but I don't think it's prejudicial either. Thank you.
Thank you both, that's lovely. So we move on to the next item, which is the Audit Wales report on hospital discharge. And I know that we've got Bethan Hopkins from Adult Wales online, and we've also got Jenny Jenkins, Head of Adult Services in Monmouthshire, in the chamber. So I think I hand over to Bethan Hopkins for introduction to this report, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can everybody hear me okay? Wonderful, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I'm here today to present the urgent and emergency care flow out of hospital report for the Gwent region. I'm going to give a brief overview of the report and take it as read, and then I'll take any questions at the end, if that's okay. This is a regional report looking at cross-sector working between the health board and local authorities to resolve discharge delays, their causes, and the impact they are having on the urgent and emergency care system in the region. This report has been cleared for factual accuracy through the RPB structures, and that will be in collaboration with the health board and the local authorities. This was an extensive audit which included cross-sector interviews and data collection and analysis, and we do hope it will provide you with a comprehensive overview of the current position, successes and challenges within the region. I'd also like to thank everybody who took the time to engage within this review. It was a big piece of work, and you'll see that it's taken place throughout Wales. So there'll be one of these reports for each of the health board regions. If you keep an eye on our website, you'll see them published as we go along. So the key finding for this report is that overall we found that despite a clear focus on improving patient flow within the region, a significant number of medically fit patients are occupying hospital beds. This continues to have a serious knock-on effect on other NHS pathways of care and creates risks for patients' physical and mental well-being. More timely assessment of patients, a less risk-averse approach to discharge planning, and a more consistent application of discharge policy is needed. Workforce and IT system challenges continue to be key barriers, and partners will need to focus to secure value for money from the investments they have made and to achieve the improvements that they do recognise are needed. If we just move on to the recommendation, this report has made 11 recommendations in total, 3 of which are directed at the Council jointly with the Health Board. These cover embedding processes to communicate discharge planning guidance to all relevant health and social services staff, looking at a way for local authorities to review capacity and embed and deliver 7-day discharge, and implementing ways in which patient information can be shared more effectively, including opportunities to provide wider access to organisational systems and ultimately joint IT solutions. You will see one recommendation specific to local authorities, and that will be for local authorities to ensure relevant social services teams routinely capture service users and carers' experiences and then apply learning. We've received management responses to each of the recommendations in the report, and as I said earlier, these have been coordinated through the Regional Partnership Board, and they've been included for information in the report itself. You'll find them at Appendix 5 or Exhibit 30. So the next steps now for the committee to be assured that the responses are sufficient and appropriate, and that the committee understands the council's position in relation to this report and its associated recommendations. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Have I got any expressions of people wanting to actually take Bethan up on her offer of actually questions at the minute? I think have I got Councillor Bond would like to ask a question.
Yes, please. Well, I've got 6 areas of questions. Sorry, so would you like me to do 3 and then let somebody speak and then else speak and then come back?
Councillor Bond, can I just check whether Jenny Jenkins is happy for us to direct questions at Bethan, or we wait for Jenny's presentation? I'm just kind of wondering what the best way to go about it is.
Yeah, I think it might be helpful to let me go through the presentation, provide the Monmouthshire perspective, and then take questions at the end, because it will provide a bit more context.
I think that's lovely. So I think we're trying to get Jenny's presentation up on screen, so just bear with us a minute.
While Hazel is helping me get the presentation up on screen, it's helpful to know that we have Leanne Watkins here as well, who's their Assistant Head of Service for Monmouthshire from ABUHB. And Leanne is going to assist, and she will be able to answer any questions at the end. But of course, Monmouthshire is an integrated service, so we work really closely with our health colleagues. Thank you, Hazel. So we just thought it would be helpful for Leanne to be here so she can provide that wider perspective around what we're doing around hospital discharge. So I'll just go through my presentation. How do I move through, Hazel? All right, okay. Okay, so you can all see that. So the purpose for me being here today is to discuss our ongoing response to some of the findings in the Audit Wales report. And just to say really as well, Bethan, thank you for providing that introduction. And even though the Audit Wales report is specifically in relation to 23-24, the issues that have been identified in the report resonate very strongly with the ongoing issues that we deal with around hospital discharge. But I thought it would be helpful to share our recent performance, just to look at specifically how we're addressing things in Monmouthshire, describe developments over the year since the publication of the Audit Wales report, and talk about how we're intending to continue to respond to our hospital discharge issues in Monmouthshire. So the key issues and what has been identified in the report is that there are a significant number of medically fit or medically optimised, I'll talk a bit more about that in a few moments, occupying beds across Gwent. So on average, it's around 250 delayed patients per month at a cost of 27 million to ABUHB, so it's a significant amount of concern. They're risked patients in terms of how they condition. It's not good for people to be in hospital when they should be at home, and of course it has an impact on other pathways of care if people are taking up bed spaces. So the findings of Audit Wales, they've been through those, but in a very high-level way. We all identify the increased level of demand, the complexity, the volume of cases that we're dealing with. There are practice issues within acute settings, risk-averse in terms of getting people out of hospital in a timely way. There are significant capacity issues within the workforce, both in health and social care. There are issues around patient flow, around the way that patients are moved around the acute settings that impacts on our ability to be able to get people out in a timely way. And the other issue that has been raised in terms of the recommendation specifically is the need to consolidate policy and standardise guidance to ensure a consistent approach to discharge processes. So the recommendations of the report were mainly for health, but there are some joint recommendations that Bethan has been through, so I won't go through those again, but I think it would be helpful to articulate what has been going on in 24-25 since the completion of the report, and just to say that we've got local, regional and national work streams around this. There's a huge amount of resource and oversight and management around hospital discharge processes. We have embedded escalation processes, so we can identify when we need to apply additional resource to any particular part of the discharge process. And every year we embark on winter planning where we agree how we're going to target our resource in order to free up some of the issues that we find in winter when there's more pressure on health and social care services. Last year, we had significant challenges within the acute settings. Demand, normally in the summer we experience a lessening of demand, but last year that didn't happen at all, and we continue to have significant pressure across the system. So there was a Care Action Committee established, which was ministerial oversight and really focused, targeted, and some finance as well that came to us in social care and across the health board to really work together and try and free up some of the pressures in the system. On a regular basis, we have an integrated hospital discharge board, which includes all of the 5 local authorities, because we do tend to monitor hospital discharge and pressures across the ABUHB footprint, which includes the 5 local authorities. So we have that on a monthly basis where we look at pressures in the system, any particular issues that we can address, and try and get ahead of any issues that we think are building up in the system. Bethan has already mentioned the Regional Partnership Board and our local Integrated Services Partnership Board, which tends to focus more on primary care and prevention. So in terms of the Monmouthshire performance, over the 2 years, because as I said, the Audit Wales report was specifically at a moment in time, 23-24. So over the 2-year period, we track our pathways of care, our delayed pathways of care, and our average in Monmouthshire is 53 per month. I'll show you a bit of data in a moment, because I think it will help to understand how the level of oversight and the amount of detail that we have regarding the movement in the acute settings and back into social care. Across Gwent, the combined average across the 5 local authorities is 250. So you can see Monmouthshire is just about a fifth of that. How we measure delayed pathways of care has changed slightly, well, more than slightly. We used to just count the number of people delayed, but now we count the length of stay. So it's the number of days that people are delayed in the system. And that is important. I'll show you the data in a moment, and you'll see how that plays out in terms of how we monitor the activity. So in Monmouthshire, over the 2 years, our average is 2,255 delayed bed days per month. Currently, it's 1,179. So you can see there's been a reduction in the number of days. And the Gwent combined average is 8,500, just to give you a bit of perspective across the region. The top 5 delay reasons, and you'll see there's a lot of work that goes into identifying exactly the reason for the delay, and there are various components of that. So there's joint assessment, and that's where there is a requirement for a social care assessment and a health assessment. Then there's a category for specific social care assessment, waiting for a care home vacancy, waiting for a care home to assess once we've identified a suitable placement, and waiting for domiciliary care capacity. It's worth noting here that the Audit Wales report referenced the particular issues in Monmouthshire of being 2. The one was domiciliary care capacity. That has significantly improved since that report was written. So we are seeing less delays around that. And also there was an acknowledgement of the number of assessments that we are completing in Monmouthshire, and some of that we think is down to the demographics. We do have an older population. We also have therapists, because we're an integrated team. We have therapists conducting assessments as well, so we think that feeds into the higher level of assessments that are recorded within Monmouthshire. So if I can, and Hazel, you might need to help me with this, I need to get back into, sorry. I need to get back in because I want to show the, right, thank you. So, okay. Do you want to go back to the Teams call? Yeah. What did you want to show? I wanted to show the data in the Excel. Yeah. Okay. Let's go back. This is just, when we get it up on the screen, this is just our data that is provided that will demonstrate the level of scrutiny and detail that is applied to the oversight of delayed pathways of care. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. So you can see this is specifically Monmouthshire, but we get this for all of the 5 local authority areas and for Gwent as a whole. And this will give you a picture of the 2 years. So you can see this split down into these categories of reported delays, so that's the number of people delayed, the number of days delayed, and then health delays, social delays, and joint delays. And you can see that we're looking pretty good here. So we're all green. So the number of delays are reduced from last month and last year. The number of bed days have reduced. The number of health delays have reduced. Social delays have increased slightly from last year. And the number of joint delays are down as well. So it is an improving picture. And you'll see from, I'll explain a bit more later on, but you'll see that there's a huge amount of work that's gone into creating this improving picture. So here, these are the number of delays. And this one here is the point at March 2023. And this is the point at March 2025. So you can see from this line, I know you can't really see the detail of it, but you can see that we are improving. And just to show you the impact of the reported days delayed, you can see that even though the numbers of delays have remained more or less steady with a couple of blips, you can see that the days delayed are significantly reduced for Monmouthshire. So that demonstrates that even though the number of delays is constant, we are getting people out, so they're delayed for a less amount of time. The other thing I just wanted to show you as well quickly were the delays by code. So every month we go through a validation process, and that validation process identifies how many people are delayed in the acute setting across ABUHB and the Monmouthshire element of it. So Monmouthshire residents, each local authority has its own validation process, and we have a discussion, and then we agree who is delayed and for what reason. And every person who's delayed is allocated a code. And I just thought it would be, I'm not going to go through all these in detail, but just to show you the number of codes that we have here. So this is the level of granular detail that is applied to understanding the reasons for delays, and that allows us to identify when we get additional funding where we need to put that funding in order to free up in the processes. So you can see here that there's health codes, there's social care codes, there's funding, there's home adaptation, there's domiciliary care, there's placement issues. There's a lot in there. So I won't go through the detail of that, but I just thought it was helpful for you to see, how much detail that's applied to it.
Do you want questions at the end?
Yeah. So, Hazel? I'm sorry. I just need to get back in.
Right. So what do you want to do now?
Go back into my presentation.
Jenny, can I just ask, is that part of our pack? That table?
No, that wasn't sent out. That was just a bit of added information. Yeah.
Okay. It might be useful for members to actually see that. Is that possible?
Yeah. I can distribute the report.
Yeah. On my screen, it's very small, but I see that one of those lines is CHC funding. So I'm quite interested in how we're doing on that. Really.
Yes.
I don't want to interrupt. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, Hazel's going to stay next to me in case of any more technical support that I need. But I just want to give you the context of, even though there's a lot of resource and oversight applied to delayed pathways of care, in 24-25 we facilitated 1,400 discharges. And a lot of discharges don't come through this process because people go into hospital and they go out and with no delay. So there's a lot of activity around this, but we are really looking at the delays here and focusing down on those. And just to give you a bit of wider context as well, the total number of assessments that we completed in 23-24 were nearly 2,000, and in 24-25 it was 2,340, and that includes all of the assessments that we're doing in the community as well. So, hospital discharge is just part of what we do. So what are the common operational discharge delay factors? Well, I did mention earlier on that it's about people being medically optimised or medically fit to leave hospital, but just because they are medically optimised doesn't mean that they are ready to be discharged, because there's a lot of work, especially around the more complex patients, to make sure that they get home safely or that they get to their placement. We want to make sure that people go to a place that they're comfortable with, that their family are comfortable with. We have to make sure that the care home understands their care needs and is able to meet those care needs. So there's lots of reasons why, once people are medically fit, that they're not necessarily ready to leave. We have to make sure they've got the right equipment. Waiting for care home, domiciliary care provider, rehab, we've got step-down facilities. There's not a lot of rehabilitation that happens in the hospital setting, so that tends to happen once they've left, and we have to make sure that we've got the right therapy capacity, whether it be in our rehabilitation beds or whether it be in terms of our capacity to support people in a specialised way when they get home, to make sure they can go back to full independence. We talked before about the bed management. 24% of Monmouthshire patients are not discharged from the hospital that they were admitted to. So there's a lot of movement around the estate, and that means that sometimes it's hard to track people and to get there and do all the assessments that we need to do in a timely way. Can sometimes be problematic when people are moving around. Family engagement, we have to make sure that families are in agreement and supportive of the discharge arrangements. Sometimes that can cause delays in the system as well. And of course, hospital discharge is the success of a good discharge is always about our opportunity to undertake assessments in a timely way, and to make any referrals that we need to make in a timely way. So we need to have that exchange of communication, and sometimes that doesn't always happen. And then just going back to CHC, where we have issues where we don't feel that social care can meet the needs of the person, where we feel there are continuing healthcare needs, there's delays in the system around making sure those specialist assessments are in place. So those are the issues. What are we doing to support hospital discharge? How are we trying to improve on all of those issues and prevent those factors impacting on hospital discharge? So we've got social workers and occupational therapists based in the hospitals, and on the wards we've got community hospital in Chepstow and in Monmouthshire, in Monmouth as well. So we've got people based on the wards. We are an integrated structure and we work really well. So that exchange of communication at local level is very effective in terms of facilitating discharge. We prioritise and we allocate cases to our teams because we recognise the need to move people out of hospital at the earliest opportunity. So we prioritise that resource. We have our communication and escalation processes at a local level, and that works really well to identify people within the estate where we need to put additional resources in to get them home safely. Our integrated structure allows us to have access to multidisciplinary teams. So we have district nurses, we've got therapists, physiotherapists, social workers. We've got them all on site, and we bring everybody together to make sure that we've got everything in place. We've also redesigned our management structure recently to focus on community hospitals and, LOS is length of stay, which is one of our measurements for hospital discharge. And at this point, I'd like to invite Leanne to to come in and give you an overview about how we work closely together within our integrated teams. Leanne has recently moved to oversee the ward in Monmouth, in Monavale, and Leanne has been significantly successful in terms of improving some of our discharge targets from Monavale. So Leanne, if I can invite you to come in and give your view about how we work together in Monmouthshire and how you feel things are working on the ground at the moment.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny, and thank you for inviting me into this forum. It's really great to be a part of it from a health perspective. So for me, just a very small bit about my background. I've come from a non-integrated borough within Gwent into this integrated services within Monmouthshire. The difference is very stark, as you can imagine, from somebody who's very operational, who had to go through lots of red tape and hoops to get to speak to social workers, occupational therapists, etc. With working in Monmouthshire, it's not all perfect, I'm not going to say that, but operationally and supporting the patient and the family is much easier. So for me and my colleagues, integration means communication and relationships that are built between the services, the stakeholders, the patients and the families, to bring everybody on board for one common goal. We've got a collective goal, which is safe discharge, keeping people well and safe in their own homes, preventing further admissions, coming into the hospital settings, because once patients are in hospital settings, they really don't want to be there, and we want to support that as much as we can by having all of the integrated teams around us and around them to support them staying well. You will know that Monmouthshire has got the highest growth of ageing population, which does lead to a lot of complex discharges. A lot of our patients that come through the community hospitals and even the ELGHs have never had a social worker before, and for them and their families is really a new thing that's been brought into their lives. And by having the integrated approach, it's not stark, it's very controlled, it's very empathetic in regards to them. They're very frightened, they're very frail, they just want to go home, and I hope that we are supporting that family to be able to ask any question they want to ask. No question is a dull question, and they will always be heard and listened to. We have an MDT approach that I'm quite key in regards to Monavale, and we bring our secondary care colleagues in Neville Hall as well, because we've got several, obviously lots of patients in Neville Hall because it's in Monmouthshire. We have a twice weekly meeting with those to ensure that we are communicating between primary care and secondary care, and ensuring the right people are brought out of the ELGH into a step-down bed into Monavale and or Chepstow. So it's about that two-way, three-way conversation. It isn't all positive. We do often challenge, because the worst place for the patient to be is in a community hospital that is not the right place for them to be. We offer rehab in regards to physiotherapy, occupational health, and we've got a social worker, which we are extremely lucky to have in Monavale. That social worker supports the patient the most from a non-medical perspective, and we are super grateful that we've got her there. So as I say, we've got our own teams. I will say there are negatives, and there's challenges. We've obviously had lots of workforce challenges in regards to health and social services, and that doesn't help the patient. Ultimately, we're all here for that patient, but we do go above and beyond when we have got some gaps to try and get the answers for them. We see lately more concerns for a patient to go home within Monmouth, housing concerns. So we are working through that with our social worker and our integrated team to understand what we can do different for that patient, because we really shouldn't be holding a patient in a hospital bed who's got a housing concern. And the housing concern quite often, very lately, has been hoarding. And so you've got to get lots of other services involved, causing that delay. I agree with Beth Ann when I was listening to you about the delays and risks that we got there. Standardising guidance practices, policies, and the IT system, that would be a huge benefit for us as an integrated service. You know, I have to have 2 computers. Actually, I've got 3. I've got, you know, just for me to understand what's going on in the social services world, and for my social services colleagues to have a health computer. It just seems a little bit, you know, it shouldn't be happening in this day and age, to be quite honest, and we're working as an integrated team. I've just come off a length of stay call now, and I'll just give you some statistics that we've had. So our length of stay, our longest length of stay currently in Monavale is 40 days. Previous to us coming in to manage this role, it was over 365 days. And so you can see where a lot of work is going on with the integration, with showing people how things can be done differently. We need to be turning around our services a lot more proactively to look for new solutions to support our patients and their families. Families are a massive part of the patient's life. You know, a lot of them depend on them. The understanding of what is an LPA, you know, how do I do this? You know, that's the demographic of the patient that we've got. We haven't got a lot of people with that, a lot of that knowledge. Some people do, don't get me wrong, but some people don't. So, and also in Neville Hall, we've got our longest length of stay in Neville Hall is 66 days, and that patient has got a very clear discharge plan coming out that we were sorting out yesterday. There's been very complex issues with this patient, so it is that we are looking at the patients all of the time. Every day there's eyes on our Monmouthshire patients within our ELGH at Neville Hall and Monavale Hospital and Chepstow. So in a nutshell for us, from me as a health perspective person coming into this, the relationship and the communication has forged us to get where we are today. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Leanne. I've got a couple more slides and then we'll take questions. Leanne, are you okay to take some questions at the end as well? If
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
No problem at all.
So I'm not going to go on for much longer. It's just a couple of slides now, really, to give you a view of what we're doing. Just move on. Okay. All right. So right, I think. Okay, good, yeah. Thank goodness for Hazel.
I'm useless at this, honestly.
All right, so the challenges and the risks that we address every day, and Leanne has alluded to some of this. I'll just go through them really quickly. So we do have a lot of data, of course. We're driven by data, and there's a lot of time and effort goes into getting that data right, because if we can get the data right, then we can identify where we need to direct our resources. So it gives us a good place to start and some evidence base. The quality of the data sometimes is up for debate. And I did say earlier that we have a monthly validation meeting, and that meeting is very much about who's going to accept responsibility for the delay. So as much as we've got the data, we do have to have that validation, that conversation, just to make sure that we've got it right. Health and social care, very, very different organisations, very different cultures, different approaches to risk. The acute setting is a unique environment. It's consultant-led decision making very often, and just to get in there and make sure that we can share the principles of getting people out with the right level of support is an ongoing issue. And Leanne, we work closely with Leanne to make sure that at ground level that we are having those conversations. People decondition in hospital, especially older, more frail people. A stay in hospital can be devastating to the ability for them to maintain their independence when their hospital stay is over. And we are trying to improve an enabling approach within acute settings. As you say, it's a very different environment, different priorities. Bed management, the moving of people around estates, and Leanne has just said that that there has been a significant improvement in particularly in Monavale, but some of that is down to making sure we get the right people into our community beds, because if we don't get the right people in and they're more complex than we can deal with, then that impacts on delay pathways. We do find that if we can get into the hospital environment as social care professionals at an earlier stage, then we can make sure that we are able to manage expectations around what social care can do. We do find sometimes that health professionals, with the best of intentions, have raised expectations that we're not able to meet, and sometimes that creates issues for us. The complexity of the conditions of people coming into hospital also sometimes don't facilitate a timely discharge. There's lots of things to work through, lots of issues to deal with. One of the issues that we're dealing with is capacity. Sometimes we have people more often than we did. We're dealing with people who don't have capacity. So then we're having to deal with a family and addressing issues of lasting power of attorney around finances, around care, and that can lead to delays. Around capacity as well is a particular financial risk to the local authority, because where we're looking at domiciliary care, there are much easier processes around finance, because it's a maximum charge of £100. If people don't engage with us around the financial assessment, then we have the option to just apply the maximum charge, and it's a straightforward process. Where people are moving into residential placements, especially where they don't have capacity and there are houses, there's house ownership, then that can really create a financial risk to the local authority if we're not able to generate the revenue that we're entitled to obtain. There are high volumes, but of course each person is an individual with individual circumstances that have to be addressed in a way that is sympathetic to them and is sympathetic to their family. And very often people are in crisis, and it's not just a question of saying, right, this is your plan, this is where you're going. There's negotiation, there's compromise, there's all sorts of issues that we have to deal with. And then, of course, as Audit Wales have identified within their report, there's lots of duplication within the process. Health is a huge bureaucracy. There's several hospitals involved in this. We've got 3 teams based in 3 different areas, and that's not including our mental health colleagues as well, so that makes 4. So there's lots of people involved. It's about maintaining that communication and not duplicating. There's layers and complexity that leads to some difficulties around managing hospital discharge. And then, of course, there's risk of outbreaks, and we have seen outbreaks within hospital settings, quite significant outbreaks. We do get it in our residential homes as well, COVID, all sorts of things that can lead to delays. So look into the future. We've already got our integrated structures at ground level, and operationally we work well. We have national, regional and local work streams, and we will continue to engage with those and continue to try and find ways to resolve our delayed pathways of care. We want to advocate for relational and outcome-focused measurement. So, as you said, the numbers are one thing, but how are we delivering good quality services to people and meeting their individual circumstances? We really need to focus on preventing admission. There's a real opportunity because once people get into the hospital setting, then they're in the process. If we can prevent them coming in, then we can prevent delays and we can prevent deconditioning and any unnecessary consequences of hospital admissions. We've got our frailty community response. We are expanding that now into Monavale and into the north, so that's further faster funding. We are also looking at the development of a 7-day service. There are issues around that in terms of workforce capacity, in terms of the infrastructure to support that as well. But that is an aspiration that we are working towards, and we did try it within our 50-day challenge. So we continue to work towards that to get people out on the weekends rather than just those few days in the week. We are developing our reablement pathway, making sure that people are worked with at the earliest opportunity to get them back to independence. We're trying to reduce our social work waiting lists and working with our domiciliary care providers on a reablement focus. Anticipatory care planning, joint training and consistent guidance, one of the recommendations of Audit Wales. That's what we're trying to apply at a local level, trying to get some consistency in our escalation processes so that we can apply our resource at the best point. We're currently reviewing all of our RIF-funded services. RIF is coming to an end, but hospital discharge remains a priority. So we are looking at all of our hospital discharge funded schemes and looking at how we can streamline that funding and streamline our processes. So that work is ongoing at the moment. And of course, we continue to prioritise hospital discharge and preventative services through our Integrated Services Partnership Board, ISPB, and we remain committed to our integrated structures and our integrated approach to hospital discharge. So that's it. I don't have any more slides, so Hazel. But I hope you can. I hope that gave you a flavour of the complexity of hospital discharge and some of the issues that contribute to delayed discharges, and some of the issues that we are dealing with on a daily basis, and struggling with capacity and resource, and also the complexity of some of the cases that we're seeing coming into our hospitals and coming through into our social care services. So I'll throw it open to questions. I can see.
Can I just thank Jenny, Bethan and also Leanne for their contributions this morning. I think for me it's been a sort of indication of how complex this area is. You know, it's lots of partners coming together, not necessarily with the same view of individuals and their hospital stay. But I was really pleased, Jenny, when you actually said, although it is about high volumes and decreasing that, we've got to keep individuals and their circumstances at the forefront of all that. It's what their outcomes are, how we can support them, you know, with their families around them to get back home safely. So really thanks. And can I just say a big call out to Monavale. That was one of the best jobs I ever had. I worked in the social work team at Monavale and it was fabulous. So thank you for that, and thanks for keeping up all the good work. So it's great. So I'm opening it up to questions. I think we've got a few hands up already. And can I invite Jill Bond to ask her questions, please?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for that input. Really comprehensive, almost like a webinar or a seminar rather than a scrutiny. And I wonder if and all the wonderful work that's gone on, but I feel a little bit at a disadvantage now as a scrutiny member, because I've spent all my time looking at outdated information, and now you've just come along and said, oh, but it's so much better now because this and this. So I've spent a number of hours looking at the report, and I wonder if you could have given us the updated Monmouthshire and the fabulous work that you're doing. Absolutely fabulous. I'm not decrying that at all, but now I feel the time's been taken. Most of my questions have been answered, mainly by the improvements you made already, so that's fantastic. But I feel almost frustrated, a little bit frustrated that I've spent all that time looking at that, and I can't now scrutinise what you've just presented because it's different, and there's not enough time perhaps to scrutinise it in the way that I would like to. So I just wonder if next time you could give the updated information. I understand you had to deliver that report for the Audit Wales. I understand that, and you give an update. I wonder if you could have shared all that information, like the chair was suggesting about that Excel spreadsheet. If you could have shared that up front, then we could properly scrutinise where we're at today, rather than we're just telling us how what wonderful work you've done since that time. So it's answered most of my questions. So I've got one from the first document, which was around risk appetite. Could you please explain how that's changed? And with all these things you're doing, and the wonderful work that's doing, streamlining, leaning processes and everything, I wonder, have we still got issues with resource? Will we at the end of this still have issues with resource? You said there's vacancies, and I read there was vacancies around issues around assessment, and the other one was I think you've answered all the other ones, but really, if we could have had all this, we could have had more time scrutinising rather than listening to a brilliant, fantastic presentation of the great work you've done. Thank you.
Jenny?
Thank you. Yeah, the data, I can circulate the data. I think the main theme that I wanted to get across really was that the data itself is just one aspect of the work that goes on, and I think really what I wanted to get across was the fact that even though that the number of delays remains fairly constant, we have improved the length of stay. So I hope that I was able to get that point across, but I can certainly provide you with the data. But that data wouldn't have given you an overview of what we've done in response to that and what we continue to do. In terms of the risk appetite, I don't know if Leanne, if you want to come in here as well, but from a social care perspective, we are quite concerned at the level of risk aversion within the acute settings. And Bethan, I don't know if you want to make a comment about that, because that was highlighted in the Audit Wales report in terms of the unwillingness of healthcare professionals to discharge people at a point where sometimes in social care we think that they could have been discharged, and also some of that as well is around the minimal availability of reablement therapeutic interventions in the acute settings, and that tends to happen once people are discharged from hospital. I will go on to talk about the streamlining. I'll come back to that because I think, Bethan, if I can ask you to come in first just to clarify what you found in your report about risk aversion, and then Leanne, if you could come in and talk about it, from how we are at the moment and how it varies in different Monmouthshire settings.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So Risk aversion was a theme which we found in nearly all of these reports in an acute setting. And I think what we were hearing was, and what we were told a lot, was there was an effort to get somebody to an appropriate baseline to get them out of hospital before discharge. However, what was normal, in inverted commas, for that person wasn't the same as a baseline for other people. So I think it was about trying to have that conversation with some of the clinicians to say, actually, this is great for Mrs. Jones and she can go home now, rather than trying to get her to a higher standard than she would normally have been. So that was one of the conversations that we were sort of having a lot, was around it's and there was that sort of, I mean, I can see Leanne nodding, and there was that sort of conversation as well around balance of risk. So the risk of not sending somebody home had to be weighed up as well around the risk of keeping somebody in an acute setting and all the associated things that can go along with it, for example, deconditioning, acquiring infections, etc. So I think what we were trying to get at with this, and in some of the other reports as well, was for the health boards to have a conversation around risk appetite and to all be on the same page. We do understand what that must feel like as a clinician when you are taking responsibility to discharge somebody, and there are issues around that as well, around the personal responsibility around letting somebody go home and then something happens. We do accept that, but I think it's around being supported in those risk assessments and having that safety as an organisation to say, no, this is fine, we're going to send Mrs. Jones home, it's best for her to be not in an acute setting. So that they were the issues we were chatting around risk aversion. I don't know if Leanne wants to add any more around that.
I will. We see it a lot, and also a lot of it is around the clinician's understanding of what is available within that community. What can a district nurse do for my patient if I'm going to show a little bit of risk averseness and send them out? They might not be at my baseline, they're at their new baseline. Let's get in touch with a team leader in ESC, district nurses, to see, can you actually go in and see Mrs. Jones every day for 3 weeks, blah, 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 and do. So it's about that conversation that's not happening. I don't think it's because they won't have it. I think it's because they don't have that time, and that is way above us. Is to do with our other operational management teams to say it's actually okay to have a conversation with a primary care colleague, because we don't communicate. That is still a barrier, that communication. But I do feel that, as Bethan has said, people are very, very, we see people as individuals because we work in an integrated service. When you're not working in an integrated service, as bad as this might sound, they are just a number on a page, or a person or a body in a bed. Unfortunately, that's the stark reality of it. And I think that by re-education or educating our acute colleagues to understand what can be done for this patient, that ultimately this patient wants to go home to where they are comfortable. They get better within their own environment, and out of that stark contrast of a hospital setting. So I think it's communication, education, to support less risk averseness.
Thanks.
Can I come back now, please, Chair? I just wondered if you've got decision aids to help ensure that consistency, and could you answer the question about whether we could have the up-to-date information up front so that we could actually scrutinise the up-to-date information as well, please? Jenny, thank you.
Would you like me to come back and address the point you made about resources? Yes, we do have issues with resources. Yes, we do, and we continue to have issues with resources and capacity. We are thin on the ground. Our resource is challenging. And at the moment, we are experiencing some absence within the service that we're having to manage. And we're at the position where, if a couple of key people are off, then it impacts our performance. And we're doing our best to address that as best we can. And we do that through prioritisation and allocating those cases where we feel our resources are best deployed. And I know health have got issues around workforce and capacity as well that are providing ongoing challenges, and all of that against the backdrop of increased complexity and demand.
Are you happy with that, Jill? Councillor Bond?
Yeah, and about the sharing of the information, please. Yes, I understand about the resource. Thank you. And are you using decision aids to help consistency in a lean process? I'll stop now because there's many more people want to ask questions. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Shall we move on to Councillor Edwards? I think he's next with his hand up. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Beth and Jenny and Leanne, for talking us through the report and providing all the extra detail as well. Although I do agree with what's been said so far, that obviously when this comes back to us again after another time period, it'll be a lot better when we've got more sort of case studies and information to look at, because you certainly have been doing a great job and moving those discharge figures in the right direction. And as the report states that, about the discharge figures are going in the right direction since the report's recommendations were implemented. Obviously, there's always great pressure to discharge patients in order to release those beds, and we would hope that no patient is discharged without being medically fit. I was wondering if any data is kept on discharged patients in the weeks after leaving hospital, and if this has had an impact on any of them having to return to seek medical treatment. And you mentioned earlier as well about the hospital system, so you could move within hospital to hospital within the Iron Bevan structure. When a patient is discharged, if they go to another hospital, does that whole period start again, or is it a case of they haven't been discharged yet just because they've moved hospital? My next question is that could you explain or tell us more about the unplanned absence rates in Exhibit 5 in the report and the reason why no data has been made available since June 2023? That's the absence rates of staff, the unplanned absence. I think for Monmouthshire it's 6%, and the highest is Caerphilly at 10%. Just wondering what sort of things you've got in place to try and reduce those absence rates. And my third question, in Exhibit 6, the number of social care assessments completed and awaiting to be completed per 100,000 head of population. Could you tell us more about why our figure was so high? I'm assuming it obviously, with these new things in place, it has reduced. And is there a reason why we don't share the best practice of Caerphilly, or didn't share it, in relation to the way they manage assessments? And I'll stop it there for now. And
Jenny, would you like to pick that up?
Yeah, okay. So I've got all that. So in terms of readmittance, we don't keep those figures. They would be health board figures. Leanne, sorry.
Yeah, hi, sorry. So we do keep the figures for a readmission of a patient. We don't keep it in primary care as much. It's a secondary care thing, because they normally come back through that secondary care door, and that we would look at that patient. If it was flagged up to us and the patient came straight back through an ELGH and then they were stepped down to a community hospital, as in our community hospital, then of course we would look at it and we would wonder what we've done wrong and what we can do to fix that going forward. It is very few and far between, but I do believe that the data is captured.
Thank you, Leanne. In terms of length of stay, no, it doesn't start again when they move. That it's a continuous length of stay, regardless of how many moves throughout the hospital estate. So it's planned from beginning to end. In terms of social care assessments, we've done a lot of work on our social care assessments and our waiting lists, and we've reduced our figures substantially. And in terms of best practice for Caerphilly, we have done some work with Caerphilly, and some of the best practice that we're trying to embed now is a development of our reablement service, and we are developing an intake model that will further release pressure on our social work waiting lists.
Thank you. I think the third question, the one in the middle, was about
unplanned absence. Yes, sorry. Yes, we're always working with our unplanned absence, and we've got our processes in place to try and manage that and get people back to work as soon as we can. We've got HR support. We have regular reports now to the managers, and we're doing all we can to ensure that we minimise those unplanned absences.
Is that okay? Yeah.
Chair, can I just come in on that unplanned absence rate very quickly? Would you mind?
Sure, Beth. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I believe we've got a footnote there which says no data has been made available since June 2023. I will go back and double check for you, Councillor, and give you a final answer. But I believe it's because that data, which is collated centrally by Welsh Government and then published, it's just they haven't published that. That data hasn't been published since that time. So it's not necessarily that the local authorities haven't submitted it. It's just the type of data and what is recorded and published does change periodically. But I think we kept it in to give a sort of snapshot of the time, but the footnote then indicates that the reason we haven't noted anymore is because there isn't any more for us to note. I mean, individual authorities will track that information at a service and team level, but we didn't have it to publish. So just to keep you updated.
Bethan, I think I'm picking up on the committee that there is sort of questions and sort of a bit of angst about the actual up-to-date sort of nature of the reports, and actually that we do seem to be missing something, and maybe that's something that we'll have to come back to the committee at a later stage. But we'll crack on, and I think the next person on my list is Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jenny and Leanne and Bethan. I think it's clear that there are improvements being made. I just wanted to raise a couple of things. I was really pleased, Jenny, thank you for this, that you mentioned that the data validation approach has its limitations, because yesterday we were in a seminar where I felt it was quite clear that some people just escape the data. So I'm really pleased that you have raised that, and I'm very impressed by that. What I wanted to ask was, there was a lot of emphasis made on families needing to be in agreement, and I wondered how this sits or conflicts with people deemed to have capacity. Because, as we know, there are varying degrees of capacity. There's capacity to make the decision, and there's the capacity to look after yourself once you're home. And that is when the family situation kicks in. And sometimes the absence of a best interest assessment can be daunting for those family members who have LPA. So that can slow things down considerably, because people are daunted by the prospect of the things that they have to do to sometimes meet the financial financial need to self-fund. And I just wanted to know, I mean, I do know the answer to this, but is it fair that self-funding quite clearly gives people a smoother transition? And again, that ties in with the LPA and the best interest assessment. If I haven't made myself clear on that and the flow of it, then please ask me.
Yes, so thank you for acknowledging the data validation approach. I think it's it's something that we've all got to try and come to terms with and work within, but it does have its challenges. In terms of families, on a general basis, and I know Leanne will will support me on this, we get challenges from families for all sorts of things, where there's capacity, where there's not capacity. Sometimes we just get families who just won't, will refuse to engage with us. They don't agree with the outcomes. People resist. Other times, families just need time to get their heads around it. So it's a dynamic that we've got to manage. And Leanne is closer to that than I am, because she's on the ward and she knows those individual circumstances. But certainly, families, are. They do require management, but as I said before, everybody's got their individual circumstances that we have to take account of, and there's lots of family dynamics. Sometimes we get, family members who don't agree, and we have to step into the middle of that and try and broker conversations between those family members as well. I think in terms of the self-funding issue, we don't find that self-funders facilitates a quicker transfer, because it's about our ability to identify that people are self-funding sometimes that causes us an issue, because we have to do all those financial assessments. So it doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to move through quicker. And then, of course, when people are self-funding, we still have to find an appropriate placement. We still have to get the care home to come. There has to be a vacancy, and increasingly, because we've got more people in residential placements now, we're at the highest level that we've ever been in Monmouthshire, and that's because of the complexity. We're finding it harder to find vacancies, appropriate vacancies, and because care homes, they can choose who they want. They're private entities, so they can decide who goes in and who doesn't go in. So we have to wait for them to do an assessment. We have to negotiate with them. So there's all sorts of moving parts around those issues. But as I say, every individual presents a unique set of circumstances that we've got to manage, and finances and capacity are really high contributors to some of the delays that we experience within the system.
Sue, do you want to come back?
Can I just come back on I fully accept that an assessment by social care does not mean queue jumping, but as you say, they are private entities, and if you were to if a family member were to contact a care facility, then they would be asked, is this self-funding? And it does make the transition much quicker. I absolutely know this to be the case, but again, without a best interest assessment, it's quite difficult to know whether you can or can't sell a property when somebody has had to go into a care home and the property needs to fund it. So there is, it does cause quite a lot of problems, ethical problems, I think, for people with LPA without that best interest assessment. And the other question, which I had forgotten to ask, was because I was approached locally myself, and it ties into Councillor Edwards' question about the absences, is are care workers now fully working to their full contracted hours? Because it was flagged that it's been flagged up that a lot of them aren't, and that this hasn't really recovered since COVID. Can you confirm whether that is or isn't the case?
Yeah, I believe that everybody who's in work are working to the contracted hours. I'm not aware that they're not.
Do you want to come back on that, Councillor Riley?
Thank you. No, it's just that somebody had asked me, and I just said that I would ask it, so I will just pass that back. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we move on to Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, Jenny, Leanne and Bethan, for your presentation. I think I've learned a great deal today. Just a small thing to say before I ask my questions. Sorry, I apologise to my dog. Please don't come back quickly. Sorry. I still struggle with acronyms. Do I mean I do mean acronyms, don't I? I'm not sure what RIF was. I'm not sure what SW waiting lists are, for example. So when you are making presentations, please would you just speak them out, because I still struggle with those. So that's a very small thing, really. Leanne, my question for you is, really concerned about what you said about computer systems and having to look at having three computers to look at 3 different areas. Is there any work being done to standardise the computer systems, and really does Monmouthshire have a role to play in that? So that was my question for Leanne, really. But I also have a question for Bethan. There was something that I didn't actually understand. I was hoping you could clarify. And it was about the cost of domiciliary care being capped at £100. I'm not quite sure what the significance of that was. So those are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So yes, the IT system is a barrier. And I believe that it should, it's very difficult. It's easy for me to sit in my seat and say, I need one computer system, because I'm going from this computer to this computer to this computer to understand one patient. It has been flagged up as a concern more often than not within Monmouthshire because of the integration. I know that it's been brought up in the past with my senior lead, which is Tricia Edwards, and Jenny is aware of it. Our ISMs have exactly the same concerns that I have. I'm not sure if it's going to go any further. I'm not sure of the legalities around the obviously GDPR and all of things like that. So I think it is a talking point. But myself and my ISM colleagues, which is Integrated Service Managers colleague, also have the same concerns. We get around it because we know how to get around it, and we want to make sure that we get around it for that person. But it is, as you say, it is a barrier.
Thank you for that. As regards GDPR, when you're sharing data with the same aim, I'm not so sure how much of an issue it is. But the question really, if anyone else is available, is Monmouthshire trying to do something about it? But thank you for your answer, Leanne. That's a wider question. Thank you.
Can I come in there? We have tried to integrate systems before. We had a system called WCCIS, and the intention was for all local authorities in Wales to be integrated fully from an IT perspective with health. But the problems around that, the technical issues, the legal issues, meant that it was prohibitive. So WCCIS is now, as happens with these IT systems, has come to end of life. And regionally, the 5 local authorities are moving on to a new system, a new case management data system, which is called Mosaic. So we are working regionally to develop standardisation of IT and data capture across the region. In Monmouthshire, we do have integrated structures to a certain extent, but we are separate organisations. And the benefits that we enjoy are primarily around co-location and a mutual understanding and shared commitment to the objectives of health and social care. But actually the whole IT system, whilst it is a barrier, the complexities around that of combining health, which is such a big organisation with so many different departments and aspects to the service are hugely problematic and far too complicated for me to understand fully and to be able to articulate. But yeah, we do recognise the issue, and where we try and resolve those issues is in those integrated communication structures and our MDTs, our multidisciplinary team decision-making forums, where we share that information and we try and deliver those best outcomes of bringing all our resources together. So we try and overcome the issues that the lack of IT integration delivers us.
Thank you for that. I'm glad it's not a barrier to you, but it would be very nice if we look forward to seeing what Mosaic brings, shall we? Thank you.
Jenny, can I ask what the timescales for Mosaic might be, and also you talk about sort of individuals working in integrated teams, but I'm just wondering what the extra additional, cost is on hospital discharge if you aren't actually sharing information at source, basically.
Well, we do share information. So all of our processes and communication structures mean that we share information, even though we do have a lot of spreadsheets and written notes to coordinate. But actually, Mosaic, we are looking towards, I think it's about an 18-month timescale now. There's a lot of work streams that are in place. It's led regionally, and we have started looking at our individual service areas and process mapping and going through all of the detail that is required that takes us seamlessly into a new data system. Some of the timescales are not set in stone because it's such a complex process, but I believe it's around 18 months, and we're hoping to be able to transition into the new system.
Thank you for that. Councillor Howarth, I think you're next.
Sorry, before we move on, can I just go back to Councillor Riley? Councillor Butler, you asked about the £100 limit for domiciliary care. Just to explain that, for domiciliary care, there's a maximum charge of £100 for anybody who receives domiciliary care following the completion of a financial assessment. So in terms of delays around finances, they are rare when it comes to domiciliary care because there's less complexity around that financial assessment process. Where the complexity comes in is where people are going into residential placements, and there's a much more complex financial assessment that's required where we have to take into account capital assets, and we don't have to incorporate those within a domiciliary care financial assessment.
Okay, thank you for that. Was that £100 a day, a week, or
a week? Sorry, a week. Yeah.
Thank you.
£100 a week. Yes.
Thank you.
Oh no, it's Councillor Bethan, did you want to?
Sorry.
Did you want to come back in on that?
If I may, just a quick point on the IT systems, just to sort of give a wider context as well. The issues around IT systems sort of talking to each other is not specific to this region. This is a national challenge, which I don't think one of these reports has gone out, which hasn't identified that as a barrier. And even if regionally areas pulled together IT systems which did allow them to talk to each other, there is still an issue nationally of people who move between health boards as well. So, I think that ideally we all know that there needs to be a much more sophisticated integrated IT system that health and social care can use, and everybody can just jump on and see exactly that patient pathway, where they are, what the barriers are, a case, central case holding essentially. We're not there yet, but I think it would have been remiss of us in this report if we hadn't identified the practical challenges that presents to the staff on the ground. As Leanne has said just now, 3 different screens, probably 3 different logins. It's manual. There's a lot of typing, moving over spreadsheets, ringing around, having meetings to confirm data. We wanted to highlight in this report that we absolutely understand what those barriers are. But as I said, we also recognise that some of this is not necessarily within the gift of the organisations to do something about. Parts of it are, and as you said, mosaics being brought in, and that will address some of the issues. But ultimately, we do recognise it's a national challenge. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Shall we move on to Councillor Howarth then? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. Well, just about. I've been thrown slightly, like some of the members, but I mean, we have the report before us, and we are looking at the audit report and then recommendations of how we're going to address that audit report. Could somebody answer my question? Why does it take 9 months for a report that was put out into the domain there, for it to come to us or to be scrutinised? I view many reports from auditors, especially national parks, and it doesn't take 9 months for it to come to us. So that's my main question, really. Why is it taking 9 months for us to view this report and ask questions of it? Has it been held back or whatever? And then I'll get on to some of the points in the report. There was a question there about the health board's working practices, the operation from a Friday to a Monday isn't the best, and that would help discharges. How is that being addressed by the health boards? Because that was one of the main points I picked from the report. There was a £15 million also, which was put into operational. Was that to do with the operation of a grant from the Welsh Government, it must have been, to make operations for discharges far more smoother? And did that work? That was my other question. And have Monmouthshire seen anything from that? And what else? My £100 a week has been answered. Yes, I'd like us just really to perhaps get in then into the 24-25. What we have done today is actually have all that data so we can see it. I think being pounced on me today after looking at the audit report, then having the update for 24-25, which should give us, it's great. We've moved forward. I'd just like to have a good look at that and view it instead of being presented to today in the meeting. If I'd have had that last night or whatever, it would give me a better outlook on it to probably just have a look at it and scrutinise. I think many of us probably feel that today as well, but not saying that we have moved forward from the audit report, which is great. I do still have reservations. One of my questions I'd like to ask today is, if we have complex complications with a discharge, does an Iron Bevan actually do the discharge for us, i.e. push them out there if we can't get the care plan in place, i.e. The funding, etc. Where do we go with things like that? Because I have had a couple of issues in the last probably couple of years here with people saying to me about the funding side of it. And also, I forgot my last question. Doesn't matter, Chair. I've got enough to go on there. We as an authority, our biggest portfolio is health, social care, etc., etc. It's taking probably 3/4 of the budget now, and I know probably come to the budget for 25-26, we're going to be wanting more and more to support the portfolio. It says in the report we are an ageing population in Monmouthshire, and that is only going to get even harder for us as an authority to manage. I'd just like a perspective on that long-term direction of where we as authority feel that we're going to go with dom care and health, which is another factor of the issue here. Health and what's the other word? Health and medical are two separate items, I found out, in care. If it's medical, it gets paid for by the health board. If it's health, I think most people have to pick that up if they can afford it. My last question is, do you feel that the operations that the health board are carrying out, because there's been lots of things in the report there about connections, because we're running critical care, I wouldn't say hospitals, but critical care units now in Wales, which I'm all for. I want the best treatment for everyone. Is it causing the complication of the connections of patients going from one to another place? So you may go to Cardiff for your critical care, then you may get discharged somewhere else, or you may be passed around to different hospitals because there's something else which occurs within that complex care. Is that where the connection is going wrong here? Perhaps it says in the report that we sometimes don't line up and connect. That's my last question. Thank you, Chair.
Who would like to respond to Councillor Howarth? Bethan, would you like to do the audit weights report? Thank you.
I can. Yeah, I can take a few of the responses from my side and then pass on to whoever else wants to pick it up, I suppose. Regarding the timescales, Councillor, I probably can't answer that for you to your satisfaction. The draft report was issued in September. They are big reports. Normally, as you'll see when we get an audit report comes out, they're a couple of thousand with a couple of recommendations with one organisation to coordinate the responses. This was a big regional report and had to run through the regional partnership board structures for the responses as well. So naturally, it's taken more time to run through those structures than we would usually have in an audit report. So what I will say is you can't necessarily hold it up against our other local reports which come to audit for timescales, because this is so much bigger than that. We have to wait for those meeting structures to sort of come together to enable us to get the responses that we need. The final report was issued in March. It's been to the health board. This report is running through lots of different forums, and it actually went to your governance and audit committees, which is where it would have needed to go from an audit perspective in May. The offer was from us if you wanted me to attend one of your scrutiny committees so you could get a little bit more in depth and ask some of the questions from a angle which maybe governance and audit committee can't. I do appreciate the timescale's been quite long. I understand. I can't talk for the council structures, but just to be mindful, I suppose, of the breadth
Chair,
of the report.
Can I just step in there, please? I totally withdraw my question, because if I look at my audit report on my screen here, it does not say draft. It says date issued. If it had said draft on there, I probably wouldn't have asked the question. It says date issued September 24. So I will take that back on the basis of that. But can we just make sure that it is a draft document I'm viewing here? It's not the final report then? It just says draft.
Is the final. No, apologies. This is the final report. The draft was issued in September, and then once we.
It says here date issued September 24 to me. On my report here,
on the front of the report, which would have been the date we issued the draft.
Oh, well, it doesn't say drafts. Most reports of the drafts, it'll say draft report on there. That's not final report. Okay, fair enough. Fine. Okay, that's fine. Okay.
I'm happy to take that comment back, though, Councillor. That's helpful. Yeah. Regarding the weekend discharges, obviously operationally, I'm sure that Leanne and Jenny can give you a bit more insight. Again, this is something which is a national issue. We do see that, it's difficult for working patterns and working hours. People have worked Monday to Friday, and you tend to see that people get discharged, during the week, come a Friday afternoon. And it's not just health boards and local authorities that don't necessarily have full cohort of staff on the weekends. Other organisations which you might take part in the discharge planning process don't as well. So it really is a whole system issue. I think the point we're trying to make is even some investment in those weekend discharges would go a long way, I suppose, to try and sort of stop the bottleneck of people being discharged Monday to Friday, I suppose, and of somebody thinking, well, it's Friday, I'm not going anywhere now, I'll be until Monday. And when we talk about length of stay of days, those weekends really do sort of add up. So again, that is, I believe that recommendation has been made in most, if not all, of the other regional reports as well. I wasn't sure about the £15 million that you referred to, Councillor. I'm not. Can you? Is it on paragraph 115? Just to make sure that that's the only.
Can I just check, Chair? I spent 2 days reading this, and then I felt just today, and I was a little bit gate crashed with what went on. Can I come back to you on that, and I'll find it in the report?
Yeah, absolutely, no problem at all. Regarding, I mean, obviously, I can't speak for the local authority or the health board, but regarding the data, I think a couple of people have said in this meeting, our audit reports are always and will be a point in time. That's the nature of them. When we use data which is released monthly or weekly or however that data is collated and reduced, it's out of date the minute we publish it. That's the nature of data reports, and I think that's something that we need to accept. The aim is then to run it through committees as quickly as possible. As we've said earlier, that isn't always practical. I think the key here is to recognise that the challenges which underpin the issues in the region are still sound. So whilst there's been, as you've heard today, presentations of improvement in certain areas, those fundamental issues around IT systems not working, risk aversion, etc., they are still going to underpin what are the main challenges and barriers around flow in the region. So I suppose I just wanted to sort of bring to your attention there, I suppose, that if I did this report all over again now, the data would look different, but I suspect that the challenges and the barriers would still be pretty similar to where they are. I think that was all the comments I had on your queries, Councillor, unless you'd like to come back on anything.
Yeah, yes, I've just found a page there, page 38, 39, the report. When we go into the other authorities there, when I touch on Monmouthshire, it says awaiting nursing-residential home self-funding 17%. On the other data for the other authorities, it doesn't say anything about reasons for discharging on that line. Could you just explain what that means then? Awaiting nursing-residential home self-funding is a reason for delayed discharge. Can you just explain that one? Because on the other authorities there, the Blind and Gwent, Torvai and Caerphilly, it doesn't mention that as a reason for late discharge. And what does that mean in Monmouthshire's context? Does that mean we're waiting for people to agree to fund families, whatever? I mean, I couldn't understand that.
Yeah, so each one of those areas has got the top 5 reasons. So the reason it'll be number 2 there in Monmouthshire, 17%, and not in the others will be because in the others it wasn't in their top 5. It might have been down at 7 or 10 or 15 or whatever, but we've only pulled out the top 5. I can come back to you with a definitive explanation on it, although it might be that Jenny can pick it up. But yeah, awaiting nursing or residential home self-funding will be exactly that. As Jenny was talking about earlier on, those really complex financial assessments which need to be done around capital assets, they do take some time, and it might just be that the resource is squeezed on that particular area, and that's why your percentage of delayed is high, because there's backlog in that particular assessment. It might be that you have a higher proportion of people with assets and with capital as compared to another group of people in another local authority. As you can see, what we're trying to highlight here, Councillor, is that each local authority has its own specific challenges. Whilst there are some issues which transcend them all, like the data issues around systems talking to each other and probably risk aversion, there are then going to be very specific local level issues which local authorities and health boards can address at that very local level. And what this report is trying to do is give you a snapshot of both. So hopefully that could be an area, for example, that you'd like to focus on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I haven't found the 15 million yet, but I'll try my best.
That's fine, no problem.
Okay.
Jenny, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bethan. Yeah, I would agree with what you said there. I mean, the issues ebb and flow slightly, and every local authority has got different issues. We've got a lack of EMI nursing placements in Monmouthshire, and that impacts on people who need that kind of care coming out of hospital. Other local authorities have got different levels of capacity within nursing homes. The other thing that we've had to deal with in Monmouthshire is poor capacity within our domiciliary care sector that hasn't been experienced in the same way as other local authorities, so that impacts on our delays. That is improving now, but things change all the time, so it's quite difficult to pinpoint exactly at a point in time. But I think one thing, just picking up on the general theme of what you said, Bethan, I think even though there's been a lot of discussion about the data, I think the 250 average across Gwent remains the same. So even when the Audit Wales report was done, that was the average. It remains the average, but what has improved is the length of stay has reduced. So that's where the improvement has been seen. And of course, the other thing to take into account is that we're just looking at delayed discharges. What we're not looking at is the increased volume of people who are actually coming into the acute settings, the increased level of complexity. All of that impacts. And a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with as well, I think it's really helpful to note that we're not in control of all of it. We're only in control of people who come into the system already and who are referred to us. And that's where Leanne and I and all of the teams are working together. Once they come to us, there's a lot of other stuff that goes on. And even though Leanne works for health, I know Leanne would be the first to admit that what goes on within the wider hospital setting and some of the decisions that are made are outside of her gift to influence. So there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of things that we can't influence, but what we're really trying to do is grab hold of the things that we can influence and improve those things. But actually the level, the averages remain stubbornly constant. Where we have delivered improvements is reducing the length of stay, and we have to take that as a success given the increased amount of demand that we've got. So to move on, Councillor Howarth, you made a point about the ageing population and what we're trying to do to address that, and particularly we're trying to focus on our early intervention and prevention and that all ties in with preventing admission. That's what we want to do. So even though we want to improve, the experience of people who are in hospital, we want to stop them going in the first place, and some of that is around, improving our community offer, making sure that we've got those community resilience established, so that people have got support mechanisms that they can draw on. And also, once people come to us, we want to be able to respond to them faster. And one of the things that we're doing is increasing our reablement offer. So that means that as soon as people come to us, whereas at the moment they kind of go into the sausage machine, we're addressing that kind of blockage by allowing people who come to us to have an assessment, a functional assessment, which will focus on their practical needs at a much earlier point, and get them the care that they need, or direct them, signpost them at an earlier stage to prevent them being sucked into the system. So we've got a big strategic programme of change that we're implementing around improving our reablement offer and being able to address people's needs at an earlier point in the referral process. So we are trying to bring all of that together in order to address the fact that people are getting older and more people are going to need care in Monmouthshire. The other issue that you raised as well, Councillor Howarth, was around complex care, and this, I think you were alluding to continuing healthcare issues where people come into the hospital setting and social care is not able to meet their needs once they're discharged, and then that becomes the responsibility of the health board under continuing healthcare. Leanne, I don't know if you want to say anything about that in terms of how that impacts on delays in the system.
Yeah, it does impact on delays. And luckily for us, the continuing healthcare division have just come into primary care, so we're looking at the remanagement around that, because it is definitely a delay through whatever reasons. I've not been part of it before, but we've literally just taken that division back, taken them on into primary care. So I'm hoping that they will be seeing some significant improvements in that. You know, more people on wards, more understanding, more discussions with families. Yeah, so it is a moving beast, the CHC is. So I think that we will be, by the next time you have these rounds of meetings, I would imagine there'll be some really positive information coming forward to you. I will just get on the back of what Jenny has said. So as we've all said in our discussions with you today, we've got a hugely aging population, and the population, a lot of them are very, very independent. And when they become an inpatient within a hospital, an EL, they'll go normally into the Grange or Royal Gwent, Neville Hall, and come into a setting like Monavale, for example. This is just an example. They've never had to deal with a social worker or occupational therapy or reablement. It is very, very new to them. So when we've got a gorgeous social worker that I work with on Monavale asking about financial information, that is really hard for some very, very proud people, very independent people, to give up that information, and that causes a delay. And it's how we empathise and show how we are there to support them. We're not prying, we're not doing anything out of the ordinary. This is to try and move them on. That understanding, because they've never been in that situation before, it's quite hard for the patients to understand, and their families. You know, so we have to take that into consideration. Is about the empathy around the patient, and I think everybody on the call would be aware of and would have the same point, as we do not want to take discharges, you know, put an early discharge in because the patient is being slightly awkward, or that is not our game at all. We are here as individual professionals to ensure that that patient, that person, is at the safest point that they can be to discharge into their own home or onto another setting. So there's lots of questions that come with the patient's discharge, and if they're unaware of them before they come in, because they've never been in that situation before, it is very daunting. And it's how we, at the ward level, operationally discuss that and bring them around to how we are, you know, why we're asking the questions. It's not for any other reason than to help them moving forward.
Thank you for that, Leanne. Before I bring Bethan in, because I can see she's got a hand up, I think one of the questions that Councillor Howarth also raised was about the impact of critical care units and patient transfers on connectivity and coordination of care. So I don't know who might be able to pick that up for us.
I can go on that if you want me to.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So it is a challenge. You know, only yesterday we were having problems with patients coming across from Neville Hall to Monavale. You know, we'll accept a patient at 8:30 on a Monday, they might not come until a Wednesday. That is a problem. That is a problem that is part of health. It's not, you know, I don't actually deal with that. That is part with discussions with our WAST services, you know, and how we support that. But what I can tell you is, a lot of the patients that go through the front door in an ELGH or the Grange often don't need to go through that front door. And so we're putting in place in local communities, we've got our frailty team because of our aging population. We've done, you know, obviously done some data analysis on that and what they need. We don't need them to be going through the front door. So that again is re-education. So we've got the critical care units. We've got a stroke unit at YYF, we've got the breast unit at YYF, and we've also got the new cancer unit at Neville Hall. These all take time to embed. I would find it very hard to understand that the people on the front line do not know about these areas and what the referral criteria would be, because you can't, you know, you have to refer a patient for the referrer people taking the referral to understand what is wrong with the patient. That might take time. Hopefully it doesn't. It can be an electronic thing, or it can be a corridor conversation if it's in the same building. But it does need to be an auditable trade for that patient to be seen, you know, because of these situations that we're in today. So yeah, they do take long time to embed. They take a long time to come. They take quite a while to embed. You know, so it is a working beast again, unfortunately, when you have that new services brought into an Arran Bevan.
Thank you, Leanne. Bethan, did you want to come back on it? I'm really conscious of the time. I know Councillor Powell wants to come in as well. Can I take Councillor Powell's question first? Will that be okay?
Thank you. It's a very quick one. When they're discharged in their home, obviously they're going to be looked after by local carers. And I know that there's quite they could do with a lot more of these carers. Do you think that if they were given a better pay and better facilities to do their job, that you would be able to get more of these in the community carers?
Yes, so traditionally in Monmouthshire we have had some issues around recruitment, but luckily at the moment we're not experiencing the same issues that we once were. And in terms of the fees that we pay to domiciliary care providers, we go into a fee setting negotiation every year, and we pay some of the highest rates in Monmouthshire for domiciliary care. So I'm sure if more money was paid, it might encourage more people into the into the workforce. But also it's about the status of that workforce as well. It's around providing good training, and what we're doing in the south of the borough is we are offering long-term contracts to the domiciliary care agencies, so we're offering security so that they can really invest in their workforce. So we do recognise that there are ways in which we can influence the workforce as commissioners, by making sure that we've got fair rates for care, and that we are offering domiciliary care agencies a level of stability so that they can plan and so they can be assured in their recruitment, they can offer long-term contracts. So we are working with the sector in order to improve the situation.
Thank you very much. That's very good to know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bethan, did you want to come back briefly before we finish?
Yeah, very quickly on last point. I've heard the word prevention used a few times today, just to make it clear that when we undertook this review as part of the Welsh Government's 6 Goals programme, this particular review focuses on goals 5 and 6, okay, which is a sort of towards the end of the process. Goals 1 and 2, which is more around prevention and early intervention, would be a separate piece of work. So I know a few people today have talked about prevention, and maybe you might think that we haven't sort of picked it up in this report here. It's because that's a whole other area which is significant. So it wasn't embedded into this report. Okay, we were just looking at goals 5 and 6. We have done local pieces of work around discharge planning within the health boards, which are health board reviews, which you'd be able to see on our website. But just to give you a little bit of insight, I suppose, into some of that prevention and early intervention work.
Thank you. Can I just sort of draw this bit of the meeting together and thank Bethan, Jenny and also Leanne for the reports that they gave to us. We acknowledge that the Audit Wales report obviously had outdated information, and we would have liked to have seen it a bit more sort of up to date. But also, when in hindsight, if we could have had some of the information from our MCC colleagues earlier, it would have meant that it would put it more in context so people could weigh up how we were back in 23-24 and what progress has been made to date. So I'm not going to read out all the sort of questions, but they will be detailed in the minutes. But we've had quite a range of questions, and both Leanne, Jenny and Bethan have been very open in their responses to us. So can I just thank everybody? We're going to have a short break and then we're going to come back to discuss play sufficiency. So thanks for your patience. and we'll see you in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Jackie, can you hear me? I can't hear you.
Sorry, turn the sound off.
Oh, Hazel's just turn the sound down.
I can. Sorry, Jackie, I have to leave at 12:15, which I did put on the previous.
Sure.
Because I've got another meeting. I've got 2 other meetings, so
Sure.
sorry about that. But I will come back after the break and hear 5 minutes.
Okay. Have you got a question about play? That I know that there was something about laps or the lap stuff or something. Do you want to just type it in the chat and then we'll pick it up? Yeah.
If it doesn't come up naturally, then yeah, you can do it for me. Okay.
Thank you very, very much. Nice to see you. Bye.
Okay. Bye, Jackie.
Jackie, or Jackie or Hazel?
Yes, Sue?
Would you mind if I asked a question about declaration of interest?
Yes.
In the report...
We're live streaming at the moment, Sue. The live streaming is still continued. Do you want to message me on Teams?
I don't know how to do that.
On the chat.
On the chat.
How do I do that personally? Oh, you mean just in the chat? 3, 2.
All right. Sorry, I didn't realise that the sound was off. I think we're about ready to resume. It's 13 minutes past 12. Is everyone back from the break? I can't see Councillor Howarth on the screen. Thanks, everyone.
Don't worry, I ain't going nowhere.
I didn't doubt it for a minute, Councillor Howarth. So we now move on to item 7 on our agenda, which is the place sufficiency assessment report, and to conduct pre-scrutiny, pre-decision scrutiny of the report. So can I hand over, who's going to pick that up for me? Do you want to, just for members that aren't in the chamber, can you introduce yourselves as we go along? Would that be okay? Thank you very, very much.
Oh, there we go. My name is Becky Hall. I'm the Play Development Lead for Monmouthshire Local Authority for Mon Life. My colleague Nick.
Nick John, Head of Leisure and Wellbeing, Monmouthshire County Council.
I'm Mike Moran, and my title is Community Infrastructure Coordinator.
Okay. So my role within the local authority is to lead on play, and one of those roles is to produce the play sufficiency assessment. So the play sufficiency assessment is a statutory duty that all local authorities within Wales need to complete. It's a statutory duty within Wales, a play-friendly nation. So Wales was the first country to have play in its policy, and the reason for that is that they recognise the importance of play for children, and the objective is to ensure that all children have time, space and permission to play, and that more children have access to play and are able to play more often. The play sufficiency is split into 4 themes with a variety of matters. One of the main things to point out with regards to the play sufficiency assessment is that it's a whole local authority approach, so it's not just one specific department within a local authority, it's a variety of different departments. So within the themes, you've got population, which is Matter A, which is the number of children in respect of each range within its area. That also looks at things like areas of deprivation, children living in poverty, Welsh language speaking children, children from other ethnic backgrounds, which also calls into Matter B, which is the needs of children from different cultures and backgrounds within its area. So this looks at inclusion, children with disability, children living in rural areas, a variety of different things fall under Matter B to do with individual children. And then Matter E, whether there is a charge for play provision and where there is a charge. In an ideal world, they would like play to be free access for all as far as reasonably possible. The second theme is places where children play. So that looks at the space where children can play, including open spaces and any other space. Traffic measures that are used to promote access to play. So this is looking at active travel and the extent to which education and local development planning policies take into account the need to enhance play opportunities for children. So we work very closely with schools, communities and wellbeing departments, fly-in starts and a variety of different departments to ensure that their policies are reflecting play. Then you have a theme of supervised provision, so that looks at your supervised play provision, so your open access play, stay and play sessions, and play work training and workforce development. And then the final theme is around policy synergy, engagement, advocacy and information. And that looks at how we're promoting play across the local authority, how the public are able to access this information, training opportunities for the play workforce, community engagement, and the extent to which all policies are taken into account enhancing play. So because of that being a whole local authority approach, to be able to complete the PSA, we needed to work with a variety of departments within the local authority. So the departments that we looked at were Children's Services, the Sports Development Team, Youth Service, the Children's with Disabilities Team, Early Years and Childcare, Communities and Wellbeing Team, Active Travel, Community Infrastructure, Countrysides, Leisure Services. There was a whole host of departments that we worked with across the past 6 months to gather information on how these departments were ensuring that play was accessible for children within their remits. One of the biggest parts of the PSA is that it is extremely important that you are consulting with children and asking those children how they feel that their access to play is, and if they're able to play the things that they would like to. We did quite a large project, so we had an online questionnaire that went out to all children that they could complete if they would like to. But we also went into all of the schools as well. So we did playmaker sessions at 30 schools where they were able to complete the link with staff to support. We did 2 young ambassadors events, one in the north of the county and one in the south of the county, where we did focus groups and open questions with the children. And then we also went into 4 other schools to do some focus groups with that. So we had 332 responses from the children across the local authority. And across Wales, that is around average of the amount of children that we get responses for. We also worked with schools. We spoke to every school and all the school responded to how they're providing for play within their schools and within their communities. And we also consulted with parents. So the way we did that was all on our social media. We put a link out for parents on social media, both MCC and Mon Life. And our communities and wellbeing teams also worked with parents and families within their projects and asked them to complete it. We didn't have a huge response from parents, but again, across Wales, when talking to other partners in my position, they also came across the same thing. They didn't really get a large response from parents. But we did have some nice feedback from parents about the opportunities for play that they've noticed within their local authority. And I've just put a few up on here. One of the other focuses within the PSA, which is quite large, is looking at the open spaces and the parks within the local authority. So during preparations for the previous PSA, an independent play value assessment was done on all of the parks within the local authority. And the play value assessment looks at the quality of play for children within these spaces. Off the back of that assessment, back in the previous PSA, we had 3 parks that ranked as good and 12 parks that ranked as adequate. So there were actions from that to improve upon that. And in review for this PSA, there has been an increase in the play values in that 3-year period. We now have 5 town centre neighbourhood sites ranked as good in terms of play value. So there has been an improvement over the last 3 years. And then what needs to happen once we've produced that PSA is we need to complete an action plan. So this is an action plan that will last for 3 years, but we review it every year. And you have to choose some actions for each of the matters. So we have 3 actions relating to Welsh language, voices of children with disabilities and inclusive resources. We have 3 actions relating to play in schools, play value assessments and improvements to parks and open spaces. 3 actions for supervised provision, which looks at play work qualification delivery, play training and implementation to strategy, and continuation of play continued professional development. And 2 actions relating to policy engagement, which is to do with community engagement and to the further development of the play strategy group. And we're happy to open up to questions now. Thank you.
Okay, I can see Jan's got her hand up, and one other, but I can't see. Simon. So I'll take Jan and then Simon, if I may.
Thank you very much for your presentation there. Here in Goitra, which is secondary settlement, community council has spent a huge amount of money and worked very closely with the neighbourhood teams to get massive improvements to our park here. So, things are looking very good here at the moment. But one of my concerns has always been that we don't, during the summer holiday, we've got plenty of, unorganised play, as it were, but we don't have any organised play. And when I've asked about this in the past, I've been directed to one of the Mum Life centres and, to get parents to go there. Is there any prospect at all in the future we could have just, maybe not a weekly thing going on, but some days where to come to the park and to do some organised play? Is there any prospect of that? Just perhaps 2 or 3 through the summer holidays, for example? Thank you.
So this summer, the programme for the summer provision has been set. What we have to consider is the level of funding that we have as well to be able to apply that. One of the biggest challenges when you're providing play opportunities is levels of staffing and paying for staffing and for things like that. So we are aware that most of our play provisions are within the main towns, and we are looking into, so one of the actions of the PSA is within the rural areas to develop play more within the rural areas. One of our actions for that is to work with the schools to be able to provide play from the schools. Working with the schools and having play come from the schools works better logistically, but it is something that we do continuously monitor, and as funding becomes available, when we're able to offer what we call outreach, so if we're going to do some play opportunities within parks, we call that outreach, and it is something that is continuously monitored, but again it is funding dependent, and it is down to whether or not we've got the workforce to be able to deliver it.
Jan, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, yes, I do. Thank you for that. I mean, we have. I appreciate that there are funding restrictions and staffing restrictions, but we do have a fabulous park. We spent quite a lot of money on it over the last few years, and it would be absolutely fantastic if just once, twice in the summer, or certainly not daily, but just a few times in the summer, where the outreach could come out. Away from the school, because not every child goes to the school. Also we are trying very hard to extend the time that the length of age of person who plays in our park, if you like. Yeah. So the most recent equipment we've put in has been aimed at that sort of very awkward 10, 12, 14 age group. Yeah. And that's what I'd like to see more going there, we've got our 2 lovely goal ends as well that we've put in, there, and we've got a lovely space there. So it just seems a real shame not to use it. So it would be lovely to have some outreach.
I'm happy to set up a meeting with the local councillors within Goitra, with the community council, to have a meeting to see what we may or may not be able to offer, or where, if I can point in any further direction, I'm happy to arrange that meeting. We do meet with other town councils as well, so I'm happy to set that up if you'd like. If you could give me a contact.
Thank you so much. Yes, I can certainly do that.
No problem. Thank you.
That sounds brilliant. Thank you.
Councillor Howarth, you're next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. A couple of points. I'd just like to make an observation, really, reference to play and the bigger picture. We suffer up in the north of the county here because in the winter a lot of our children can't do sports, etc., and get involved because we don't have the facilities up here. And I'll take, I see Mike Moran's on the call, on the meeting there. I'll take the 3G or the 4G or 5G, whatever you call them. We desperately need the playing areas during the winter period for children to get out there, participate in teamwork and participate in group work as well, which is virtually impossible this part of the county. And I'll just take a big reflection on all that, Chair, is hockey, football, rugby, you name any sports in the winter during rural locations with the weathers we have, etc., sports for young people and children become virtually impossible. And this is taking me back then to what we're discussing today. We need to bring the younger people back on board if we can do it. It is difficult on the basis of is we all know where they go. They love to go up in the bedroom or do things on their telephones or play the computers or whatever. A lot of children don't have that facility as well. You know, I mean, it's so expensive to do. So I'll take you to some of the communities we have in Monmouthshire, which are don't have a lot. They don't have a football team. They don't have a rugby team. They don't have none of the facilities the big towns have. And they do have deprivation there. This then leads me into the consultation process that we do with some of these communities. I think banging on doors and talking to some of the children, which I've done in Gilwan over years, of what they want, not what others want for them, it's what they want. And Mike knows where I'm going to go with this. I was a big instigator of what went on in Gilwan there, and you have mentioned it in your slides there with a couple of other people. And where we've got to with Gilwan is unbelievable. And it's took a lot of hard work and a lot of money. Kids come from everywhere to Gilwan because we've put facilities in there they wanted. Not what I wanted, it was what they wanted and what the community wanted. And I think you've got to go with what they want. You ain't gonna give them everything. I remember sitting in a meeting, and it must have been about 2011, because somebody said, "Oh, the Olympic Games is coming, and we'd like a swimming pool in Gilwan." And you listen to them, and you go along. But out of that conversation, you hit some of the points that actually what kids want. And I think that's so important. Not what they want even at school. Kids want to go out and they want to play. I think for our areas within the Chepstow, Caldecott area, Abergavenny area, I think some of them kids, I think we need to sit down with them, not send an ambassador out or not send a survey out. I think we need to sit down with them and listen to them, exactly what they want. And an area down in, I know it really well because I used to take my football teams down there, down to Thornwell and over to Abergavenny and Monmouth, and all kids want different things. But I think the main aim of what I'm trying to point out here is making sure that we listen to the kids out there, the children, I won't call them children, listen to the kids out there of what they want, not we as authority want and what we can do. I think it's what they want, and then the parents then I think will step in and assist in trying to deliver something. I think the play schemes are great, but it's the long-term vision I see with a lot of this stuff. Downfall of Gilwan, I'll just let committee members know, you do something successful in this county, you've got to make sure you have the provision behind it, and we're having a lot of criticisms about successful thing we have in Gilwan here. There's a lot of criticism coming now, it's too successful. Just bear that in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Rebecca, I can see that you've got your hand up. Do you want to respond? Or?
Yeah, just very quickly, just to say that I 100% agree with Councillor Howarth. children's voices is a very big part of play and a very big part of the PSA. When we consulted with the children within the focus groups, that was more around asking the children questions and getting them to open up about their play. What I can tell you is the high percentage of those children said they preferred to play outside. So you are completely right about that, and we are very, very aware of that. And whenever we are planning for our provisions from a play perspective, from a supervised play provision, the children's voices in that is at the very centre of it. But you are completely right, when we're planning for open spaces and parks and other activities that need to take place outside of those play provisions, yes, that children's voice, that community's voice is very important and will be considered going forward.
Councillor Howarth, do you want to come back, or are you okay?
No, I'm fine, Chair. I think people have listened to what I've had to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Riley.
Hello, thanks all of you. And yeah, Rebecca, I just wanted to ask one question, because I wasn't sure if the consultation had been done. Is there more consultation going on through the summer, or is it all completed? Because I thought it hadn't been completed.
Yeah, I
think it has.
Yeah, so I think what within the report we've said that we're going to be consulting within the summer for the play grant that we've been given, so we will be consulting with the children on how they want the parks and that open spaces to look at. The consultation that's already been done with the play sufficiency assessment, that's around what children would like in general for play, how they feel that they can access play. That already needed to be completed because the PSA has to be completed this year. So that part of the consultation is complete, but future planning on spaces, there will be further consultation with the children for that.
Okay, because I've got to be honest, I read the Welsh Government's parental questionnaire, and I did think, not your fault or anybody else's fault, but I did think it was quite poorly worded in some ways. Questions like, do your children not go out to play because there are cars in the street? Well, some children go out to play whether there are cars in the street or not. It's not necessarily a good thing. And I take Simon's position about asking children, but I just would like to say it needs to be age appropriate. As somebody who has to pick a 5-year-old up from school and take them through a swimming lesson today, that is deemed more important than the party he wants to go to. So it does need to be age appropriate. Absolutely. But yeah, thank you for all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Great, and you're okay with that, Councillor Riley? Yeah. Can I move on to Councillor Edwards? I've got a couple of questions in the chat, one from Councillor Bond that's had to leave, and also one from Councillor Jones. So if I move on to Councillor Edwards first, and then we'll pick up the ones in the chat. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Becky, for taking us through that presentation. I completely agree with what Councillor Howarth was saying then about engagement with children, so it's pleasing to hear that, what you said about that engagement with not only school children but parents as well, who use these facilities more than us, you would say. Also, many of my residents speak enthusiastically about the summer play provision as well, but then again, I suppose my residents are within a town, and so there's concern about the rural wards and the fact that parents have to then travel to take their children to these summer play provision schemes. One concern I have, though, is the piecing together of projects to make further improvement. Like, for instance, a lot of good work has been done with the Community Nature Spaces project. For instance, there's a parkland in my ward, in the centre of it, with quite a lot of grassed area, and that's been completely improved. Okay, with nature, things take time, and it's been a slow progression with the improvements there with that. But of course, with that developing, you can see the benefits there, but then you look at the play equipment, and unfortunately they're not as bad as the play equipment in other areas. So then we miss out on completing that scheme, if you like, and making it a much better area. So I appreciate there's only so much money in the pot, but see this as a missed opportunity, if you like, and I don't know whether some of these areas can then be find funding to improve, to renew, to renovate these play areas, and I wonder why this wasn't sort of considered in this lot of funding that is mentioned in this report.
Do you mind if I pass that question over to Mike, because he's got more knowledge of these areas of the parks than me? Is that okay, Mike?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I mean, the basic situation is that when we had the play value assessments done, it didn't necessarily look at the quality of the equipment. It looked at the range of activities that children could participate in. So if you had something, you know, some will identify that there are no swings there or no roundabout or whatever. And it was a bit of a wake-up call, really, because the majority of them were ranked as poor in Monmouthshire. I think we did have 110 at the time. We have 109 play areas now, and we've converted some of the ones in Monmouth into community nature spaces. So we've reduced our stock of play areas. It's very difficult because there isn't any ready-made funding available for play area improvements. As a council, we've never had that because it's never really been regarded as a priority when compared to some of the other priorities we've got as a council, quite rightly, I'm sure. So we do tend to rely on Section 106 funding when it comes along, very rarely from the Welsh Government in terms of capital funding. And then we tend to work with local groups as well. So we have a lot of friends groups across Monmouthshire, and it's always a question of actually trying to search and find money to make improvements, really. In terms of specifics, there are one or two play areas. I think there's one in your ward, isn't there, at the back of the Chepstow Football Club that is very poor to access on that side. Do you know the one I'm speaking about there? No? No, okay. Yeah, well, it's a play area that was put in when the Lockfield, the old school, was developed. And let me say that if we had a planning application today that suggested putting a play area there, it'd just be thrown out because there's no overlooking on it, sort of thing. So the ones that we've prioritised, we've tended to go for NEEPs and LEAPs, which are larger play areas, a neighbourhood play area or a local equipped play area. And those are the ones that we feel we should concentrate on, because if we are going to make a difference, we have to start somewhere. We've made a big improvement since 2019. We've gone from, I think, 3 play areas ranked as good up to 6. We've got a lot of others that have improved in the adequate quality sort of boxes. The bits that we need to tackle are a lot of the smaller play areas that don't offer any play value at all. And I think, you know, in the future that would be a question for the council to think about, because one way of dealing with those is just to take them out and convert them into something different, so that we've got less play areas, but the ones that we've got are better quality and they offer a lot more play value for a wider range of children. I think, you know, there was some mention earlier on from Jan in Goitra about the age range that we cater for, and I think that's another important sort of consideration that we've got as well. Should be looking at that older age group. And children, you know, I've got 5 children, none of them used a play area after I think they were 10 years of age. But some of the players we're putting in today are actually catering for that 10 to 12, 13-year-old. It's you know, it's a wide open question, really, but that's where we are at the moment.
Okay, thank you. If I can just come back on that. Yes, I think the football field you were talking about, it used to be in my ward. Is that the section where there's a play area and a community orchard there as well? Am I ringing any bells? No. Not that it matters, just for clarification. Yeah. But I was just thinking about what you just said about, and I wanted to double check now on that area that I was referring to, the Danes in the centre of my ward, where you mentioned about, or I mentioned first about the community nature space. Does that mean it isn't classed or officially classed as a play area now, as far as the council is concerned, or is it both? Is it still a community nature space plus a children's play area?
Yes, it is. Yes, that will be. I mean, the Danes and the Bayfield, I think they both score exactly the same, really. But with the community nature space enhancements, that is very positive in terms of play, particularly for attracted children, perhaps on the autistic spectrum, because some of the sensory planting there is evidence to show that attracts children to use those areas on a more regular basis. Thank you.
Jan, I can see that you've got your hand up, but can I take the questions in the chat first and then come back to you? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I only wanted to comment on something that Mike had said. But do
you want to do that quickly? Do you want to do that quickly then, or?
Yeah, I mean, yes. Just really, what we found in our funding for our park came from S106, by the way, for the acres development, and our specific. The surveys that we did amongst residents and children showed us that we were missing out on that 10 to 12 sort of age group where they stopped playing. But we put some pieces of equipment in now where we've got our 10s and 12s coming back in. And it does illustrate that you put the right things there, then you will get them back in. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. We've got a question from Councillor Bond that had to leave earlier, so if you just bear with me, and I'll just read it out as she said it. So it's, what is the criteria for the tables, please? Some ambers have action, some don't. Could NA, and there are a couple of bits in the table that says NA, be relevant. Some ambers do not relate or link to the action list, page 188. Some gaps are missed in actions list. Happy to share specifics by email if wanted. And she then goes on to challenge the assessment of, and it's one of the play areas in her ward, of Longfellow decay in play area. If not this funding, where will this only part in West End get funding? Not placemaking, as not in the scope apparently. No 106 money because there's no building in that area. There's obviously deprivation in the ward, and when will this area be helped? And then she's got another question, which is, how is play value calculated, scrutinised and checked for consistencies? And please, can we ask for more information on impact to residents? I don't know whether that's the next bit, I'm not sure. Please ask for more information on impact to residents on forward work programme to allow members to determine. So that's actually for another bit of the agenda. So I don't know if anybody can pick up on Councillor Bond's questions for me.
Yeah, so if I can take the first one. So I believe this is relating to the RAG rating for the PSA as a whole. So we rank good, amber or red. So green is that we are achieving everything that is possible. Amber is that there is improvements, however there might be reasons why we couldn't improve on it, and red is that it needs to be sufficiently improved. So that comes from Welsh Government. But what Welsh Government do say as part of this is that it is a self-assessment, and they do appreciate that there are challenges that for all different local authorities that might not be able to overcome. So when I rank things as amber, that can be for one of two things. So it could be that there is areas for improvement in this and we can action that immediately, or we can action that as a priority, or it could be that there are areas for improvement on this but it's not something that we would be able to action. So where I put an action based on an amber within the action plan at the end, this is a 3-year plan, and we have to also look at whether or not we can deliver on those actions within that 3-year time frame. So it wouldn't be possible for us to give an action for every single amber because we wouldn't be able to deliver that within that 3-year time frame. So we're looking at the priorities of that, and we're putting in the things within the action plan that we can do as a priority and that we can achieve within those 3 years. And then as those 3 years go along, if other things come up, we can add to that as things go along. These are reviewed annually. These go to Welsh Government annually. And if any changes do need to be made period, or if anything comes about within that time period, we are able to add to that and take away from that. With the non-applicables, I believe that's relating to, there are some sections where it's non-applicable and then there's a RAG rating. Within this period of the PSA, they introduced some new criteria that had never been in there before, which meant that we couldn't compare it to last period's PSA. It was just a brand new thing that we had to look at. So I took that question to Welsh Government to say, what do you want us to put on here? And they said to put non-applicable on the criteria that haven't been looked at before and that are new for this year. So I hope that answers that for you. And again, I'm happy to receive those questions, specifically in emails from Councillor Bond, if she would like some further details.
Becky, I'm sure that Councillor Bond will watch the recording or look at the minutes and get back to you if she requires additional stuff. There was stuff about her own ward as well.
Yeah, if I can hand that over to Mike.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Yes, Longfellow is in the same category as a lot of players that we've got, that it does need upgrading. The play value score for Longfellow is not that bad, really, to be honest with you. I think what Councillor Bond is saying is that there won't be any Section 106 funding in the foreseeable future to be able to apply to that, to those improvements. So how would we go about funding it? Unfortunately, we don't have a ready-made answer, but you know, there are places that we could apply for funding. In some cases, town and community councils have offered sort of grants and worked in partnership with us. We're working on a project in Chepstow at the moment where the local town council has allocated a very large grant, and we then applied for a lottery grant to add towards that. So the Dell Park will be improved, well, out of all recognition, really, hopefully in this financial year. And you know, just to give you an idea of the scale of that, that will probably be an expenditure of about £200,000. So you know, Longfellow Road is a point in question, because not only does it need improving, but there's a question mark about its location, because it is located behind some houses on the access road to the rugby club, and ideally it should be in a more visible area where there is some sort of what we would perhaps call sort of informal supervision, because it's visible to the public as they pass on a footpath. So I think in that particular case that I am in contact with the town council at Caldicot at the moment about another play provision, so I think we'll just add that to the list and address that at the time. What I can offer to do, if members would like, is we could circulate the assessment form that we used to assess the play value scores back in 2019. And one of the recommendations, I think, later on in this agenda is to go back and assess some more play areas to get an up-to-date assessment for those that have been improved in the interim period. So we can do that, Chair. That wouldn't be a problem.
And that is an action of the PSA, that we are going to be reassessing all of the parks again, because we did an assessment 3 years ago, so we're going to reassess them again. Some of them will have increased again in value from work that's been done over the last 3 years. And then from those assessments, we can make future plans across this PSA period.
Thank you for that. Thank you both Becky and Mike, and we look forward to hearing what might come of that, so that's really positive. I just want to, I can see the other Councillor Strong has got his hand up. Can you just bear with me and I'll just read out Councillor Jones' question first.
Fine.
Her question is about whether, is it LAPs or LEAPs, are considered to be as important as NEEPs, as they provide play areas for those in less populated areas such as villages, thus providing social interaction for children and families. So it's really about the sort of rural nature of play provision, I guess.
Yes, I think the simple answer to that, Chair, is that LAPs on their own really wouldn't provide much play value for many of the villages that we've got around the county. And again, it's a very mixed bag. In some areas, the community councils are responsible for their play areas. In some areas there is Section 106 funding available, in others there isn't. But what I would suggest is that for the larger villages we should be aiming to have at least one LEAP, which stands for Local Equipped Area for Play. I don't know who thought up these titles, but they're a little bit confusing. LAPs really are intended for children between the ages of 0 and 5 years of age. So if you had a new development, there is guidance from Fields in Trust about how many LAPs you should provide, and then you would then move on to LEAPs. But I think because money is so scarce, and the evidence shows that play is not just about fixed play equipment, it's about public open spaces, access to green spaces and woodlands, etc. I would think that if, you know, an aim would be in the longer term to have a decent locally equipped area for play in each of the larger villages. That's a piece of work that we could do just to bring some focus to it. That wouldn't be a difficult thing to pull together at all, really. But no, the short answer to Councillor Jones is that if possible, we'd like a LEAP in every village of reasonable size.
Thank you for that. Can I move on to Councillor Strong to ask his question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. A lot of what I wanted to say has been covered by two of the contributions from Mike. Particularly, I was interested to hear about this idea of taking out some of those very small play areas with virtually no play value. What I tend to call 106 play areas. I think that's how they came about. And we've not had the money to maintain them. We got one in my ward that's got nothing in it but a rocking horse, or one of the horses on springs. And it would be, I think, in my view, better to take it out, put something else in. One of the other problems, of course, is you put in a play area which might be suitable this year, but in 10 years' time, the demographic of the area has changed as the children have grown up and whatever, and it's no longer suitable. So a more flexible approach, which seems to be what you're suggesting there, might be appropriate. I'd like to stress the importance of you know, where those play areas are well used, those small play areas, of self-help groups. We had an example again in my ward in Roggett, where a group of parents approached the council via me about cleaning up the area and painting it, and I was half expecting a reply saying, no, you can't do that, it's health and safety and insurance and things. But the response from MCC was very positive. They said, yeah, that's great, go ahead and do it. If you're going to paint it, obviously put up signs, but we will also provide the paint. Yeah, what happened in the end is that we did clean it up. We were going to paint it this spring, but your guys came along and actually did it ahead of us. So obviously something happened there as a result of it. So just stressing the importance of self-help groups and also community councils. I think, you know, community councils got a much closer eye on their own wards than we can possibly have at MCC level, and they can respond to those changing situations. And it's my experience that if a community council does make an effort, then Michael often find small pots of money to add to it. I know we're working on that at the moment in one of the Caldecott parks. So those are observations. Just one question. I noticed I was right through on page 65 or something. There's a blank space under community-focused schools. There's a brief comment later on, but in that main box, there's nothing there. I'm not entirely surprised by that, in that community-focused schools are about much more than play, but play is an important part of it. And I don't think there's time to discuss that really now, but the whole idea of community-focused schools might be something that one of the scrutiny committees should pick up at a later stage in its forward work programme, because I think my experience down in the Caldecott area is there's been a big retreat from that since the days when the village college was opened in Caldecott in the 50s, to a time when it's a school that's behind fences and locked at, I don't know, 5 o'clock and whatever. So that's sort of the question, is that something that's possible to look at a later stage? It might be place rather than people, I don't know, but there we go. Thank you.
Can I just answer on that? I will double check that on page 68 to see what that is. I don't know if maybe that's just an error on my part if I haven't just put something in. But we do work with the community focused schools officer. She sits on our play strategy group. Some of the developments that we've done in the schools to have stay and play after, so the schools are opening their grounds for play, and some of the play break time development play has been a joint working partnership between myself and Lisa Grant from Community Focused Schools, and she's now sitting on the Healthy Preschools team. So there is work in process and good communication between ourselves and Community Focused Schools. Lisa is a very big advocate for play as well. So yes, it is something that is being developed, but I will double check that and just make sure I haven't missed anything on that. So thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Thank you, Becky. Is that sufficient?
Come back briefly on that. Yeah, I'd like to know more about that if we can at some time, please. Yeah. I don't think it's so much of a problem with the secondary schools because, you know, when there are leisure centres attached to them, in what was quite a pioneering move at the time, and they do good work. Again, there's an example in Caldecott where the leisure centre staff have noticed that kids are climbing over the wire to get into one of the red grass areas and are playing football in there, causing no trouble. And so what they've done is they just opened the gate so kids can just come in when they want. And apart from a bit of a litter problem, that's been a success. And you know, we need sometimes perhaps be a bit braver, not be frightened of our kids.
Agree.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I'd quite like to sort of just come in and say I had the opportunity to attend the sufficiency conference up at Bridges sort of recently, and it was an ideal opportunity to actually have input from lots of groups touching on sort of play across the county and some of the good work, and collaboration and cooperation between different departments sort of rang out for me. I just want to pick up on page 30, and I take on board, Becky, that the not applicable is probably because you haven't collected the information before. But it was mainly about consultation and the aspirations of girls, really, because there's a whole thing, you know, there just wasn't very much in that bit. Making space for girls and for us is a bit of a movement about, you know, girls use parks and open spaces in a different way than possibly boys do. Yeah. They might not access it through adolescence because of whether it's fear of crime or whatever. So we need to be aware of the needs of girls. They make up 50% of our young people, obviously. And I really would like to see some sort of reaching out to make sure their voices are heard. I mean, whether it's having sort of benches that are curved round so that they can sit and chat, as well as, you know, socialising and using some of the play equipment as well. I want to also, you know, we had the other Councillor Strong and I went to a local event in Caldecott where the local police were playing against the young people and football sort of tournament, and there was only one girl there. So it's all about provision for youngsters doing organised play as well as our play spaces. We have, especially on Severn side, we've got some really good social clubs that do offer provision for young girls and women, but we really do need to make sure that that is adequately funded because that's got an impact for well-being in their later years. So thanks for that, and thanks for the presentation and the questions. Does anybody else want to raise anything or come back on the report? Oh, Simon, I see you've got your hand up, sorry.
Chair, under 2.3 in the document, what it's saying is it's all to do with the capital grant for 25-26. As we know, we're well into that now. With the schemes, etc., with the report, what happens? You know, I mean, the grants there now. By the time we get through all the consultation and doing things, if a community is not successful or there's something there which we're not going to support, how much time do we give then to that community to decide what it wants to do? So you're talking like community council, you could be talking town council, you could be talking a wide variety of people, or do we just say that is it, we're not supporting that and it's got to be left? And I put in the chat bar, I don't want to see areas left and wooded over or just left to grow to bramble or whatever. Like I know you may be ticking another box there, which I don't want to get into, but for me, I think there's a bigger picture with all this, and I don't know whether, we're letting the horse out before we shut the stable door, and we shouldn't be shutting the stable door. I don't know. I'm very uneasy with some of the proposals here. We're talking about our kids here, and I do think whether you're talking from 1 year old to 5 or from 5 up to 15, I mean, we still have a vast number of children out there, kids aged from 10 to 16 to 18 or whatever. I still believe we have a duty and responsibility to make sure we engage with them, and that's the frightening thing. I don't know whether we are going to do or not, and one of my recommendations would be any areas that we're going to withdraw and not support, I would like a full survey of everyone there, and that's up to members as well to make sure that they help in delivering that and a way forward than just being left. I don't think it's the answer. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just add to that, Councillor Howarth? I don't know how many sort of parks and that actually relates to over time, but I mean the very basic thing is that the ward member ought to know, or local community council or town council ought to know. Is that the case? Is what usually happens?
Well, Chair, if you were proposing to remove any play area or make a substantial change to it, we would obviously consult with the local member together with we would do some sort of survey on that. We quite often go out and meet with residents groups and sort of friends groups. There's one I can think of in Coent where the play area was a lap provided as part of the new development. It's a bit bizarre really, because some of our older play areas, I'm thinking maybe a good example would be Castle Dell, were probably put there in the 1960s, and we don't have a budget for maintaining those play areas. But the more modern ones that have been done as part of housing developments, we do ask for a commuted sum to maintain that for the first 20 years of its life. So the more modern ones do have a budget for maintenance, the older ones don't. It's just a quirk of the way things have happened. But the short answer is, if we were looking at taking any out, we would certainly do a local consultation, particularly with the town or community council, and especially the local member or members, really. When we did the one in Monmouth, that was also part of the Community Nature Spaces project, and the evidence there was that there was very little use of the majority of play areas on that estate, and the only feedback we've had since we did that, we did a local consultation exercise, there was quite a lot of support for it. And the main thing that they wanted was a good play area where they could take their children, because families, nowadays, they might have children that are teenagers and youngsters. They wanted it a more centralised play area where they could go on a one-off basis to be able to take their children to play, really. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Any other comments, or shall we move on to the next bit of the agenda? I can't see any more hands up. Can I just thank everyone in front of me? Thank you so much. It's been a really interesting report. Thank you for the answers to the questions as well. And I'm sure if any members not present have any follow-up questions, that they know who to contact. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
If you want to sort of leave while we just sort of finish up, then that's fine.
Chair, may I ask, are we going to out the recommendations on this report, though, are we going to put anything in there as a select committee on the basis of consultation, making sure that we cover, making sure that that does happen? it's up to you as a committee, but my feelings are we're a third into the budget here, and if we're going to close playgrounds down and play areas, I do feel that we have to make it very clear.
I don't think there are any, Councillor Howarth, I don't think there are any plans to close any play areas. I can see the officers shaking their heads in front of me. So
no proposal.
Okay, that's sound. No
are
problem.
we
So
as a no, are we as a committee happy to accept the report?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank
Okay.
you. If there's no play areas being closed, I'll go along with it. Thank you.
Thanks for the clarification. Cheers.
Thank you.
Okay, can I take members through the work programme? Just sort of short updates, really. So we've got quite a busy July meeting. I don't know if you've had a chance to have a look at the work programme, but we're oversubscribed. And based on the fact that we've met for 3 hours this morning and we've only done 2 items, I don't fancy our chances of doing 4 items at the next meeting. And some of them are quite big ones. I mean, the Adult Services Inspection Report, that's going to be quite a lengthy one as well. So, first off, I want to draw your attention to the 9th of July. You might see that in the work programme. This is when a motion was taken to Council about the domiciliary care procurement, and we've set up a meeting which will be led by P&O, but you were invited to go to that meeting. So that's the 9th of July in the morning at 10 o'clock. So just to note that one, you should have had an invite for that. And then on the 22nd of July, which is our next meeting, we've got review of Housing Social Grant Programme, the Strategic Equality Plan Annual Monitoring Report. We've also got the Adult Services Inspection Report, which I guess will be lengthy like this morning's. And also we might have a report, it's tentative, on attendance and children missing in education. Now, having a look at the Cabinet and Council forward planner, Robert and I have had a look at this in advance, and there's an item that we wanted to flag up to you, which is a report on a county of sanctuary, and I didn't know if you wanted to look at that as well. But if you do, you're already looking at 5 items. So what I'd propose is, firstly, do you want to look at the sanctuary report? And secondly, can we propose that we have a special meeting and split some of this agenda up? And what I was thinking was Wednesday the 16th of July, if that would work for the majority.
Hazel, I think that's a really sort of realistic suggestion. I mean, we've done quite a lot of meaty work here this morning. To have 4 things come at us that are quite meaty stuff as well, I think is too much. I don't think we do any of the reports justice. Simon, have you got your hand up?
I have, Chair, yeah. I'd just like to know, out of all them reports then, which is the next item agenda is the planner, etc., none of them are actually going to be key policy decisions, or it's just the sanctuary one, is it? So let's just go to so we got the dom care one, which was a full council decision to refer back and scrutinise the dom care procurement. But the HSG programme, that is just a report from Ian Batewell, and then the strategic equality plan for 24-25. They are reports, aren't they? There's nothing here in here which is going to be something which will implement a cabinet decision or a council policy, etc. Am I right in saying that, Chair? I just want to be clear on that. Bar that last item Hazel mentioned. Am I right?
Can we have some clarification on the housing support grant programme? So might that be contentious?
Well, basically, you've got many roles in scrutiny. It's not just pre-decision. So we use the Cabinet and Council planner to look at decisions that might be going through so that we can do pre-decision scrutiny. The sanctuary one is pre-decision scrutiny. If you want to look at it, it's going forward to Cabinet decision on the 17th of September. I think you might be interested in that. But the other reports, you've got a policy development role, you've got a role in reviewing policy, so you also have to some degree a role in reviewing performance, although the Performance and Overview Scrutiny Committee does a lot of that. They basically review the performance of pretty much everything corporately as well. So when it sort of falls to things like adult services inspection and like the one today, those reports go through to Governance and Audit Committee first if they've been drafted by auditors, but then if the Governance and Audit Committee feel it's appropriate for you, they ask if you'd like to look at it, and mostly you've wanted to look at it because it does come under people. So yeah, you've got many different hats, but I would say the Strategic Equality Plan annual monitoring report, that's really important and sits within this committee. So in terms of whether they're not going for decision, I guess maybe what Councillor Howarth is thinking is, could they move back? Are they desperately needing to all be scrutinised in that meeting? The problem we've got is then we get into the autumn in September, and I've already got quite a lot in your work programme that you would probably want to look at. So I think if you were to have a special, we could cover 2 or 3 of them off, and you could just perhaps focus on the 22nd, which is your normal meeting. We could focus on the adult services because that might need quite a bit more time than some of the others. So yeah, would the 16th work for you in the morning?
What do people think?
Because alternatives really, yeah, the Wednesday, because alternatives are, do you want to do the 21st, which is the day before, but you'd be meeting 2 days in a row, or you do all day on the 22nd, which is really horrible and long and everybody's tired. So it makes sense, I think, if we could do it as a separate meeting. But I'm trying to think of aligning it reasonably close to the meeting in the chance that I can get some of these report authors to move in terms of their timescales, you know. If it's reasonably similar, a week or so forward or back, you can usually get people to move, you know, items and just balance it a bit.
Yeah, can I say though, out of all them you've just mentioned, Hazel, actually then they aren't ready to come to us. We're just putting them in there. What I'm saying is, if you just said there, perhaps we can get the report authors, perhaps move them, or if they're not ready, is there any chance on that 9th meeting we could shove one of the items in that and take it in that as a people's? No,
because that one is a P&O meeting and you're joining for it, but their agenda, they've already got 2 or 3 items on there which you're able to stay for if you want to, but they've put this one first, top of the list, so if you want to leave you can. So unfortunately, really this is the picture across all the scrutiny committees. They are really, really full right through into the new year, so it's difficult to prioritise what you want to scrutinise, but you know, if you want to do these things, we might have to have another meeting.
I'll take the Jan, sorry, your hand's up.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I wasn't sure whether we're just having an informal discussion or we're doing hands up. My own feeling is, you know, because this is right at the start of the school holiday, there's going to be 6 weeks of pretty much nothing going on. And I hate to say it, but could we go for a full day? I don't know how other people feel.
It's up to members. I know going into August is very, very unpopular. We've had to have meetings in August. It's very difficult to get people together. So it's either we go earlier. I think if we went any later than the 22nd, you might be struggling as well.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, Councillor Strong has got...
Yeah, I think with 4 days,
it's too much.
lapses really badly. I would favour putting in a special. I think the 16th was a date you mentioned. That works for me. I don't know about others.
So we're suggesting the 16th and the 22nd, are we?
And then 16th and then the 22nd.
Yeah, 22nd's already there, isn't it?
Yeah.
The 16th is a special. Yeah.
And then the joint one is on the 9th.
We're happy with 16th.
Yeah.
I think Councillor Powell's happy, Chris yeah, and Chris is happy too. So I think, shall we go with the majority of people that are actually here online, really? Okay, is that all right?
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah, so the next item was the Cabinet and Council Forward Planner, and basically we've kind of talked about that in conjunction, but we've looked at things that are coming up. I think Robert and I are going to be keeping a close eye on the Cabinet and Council Forward Planner because we're aware of issues, having had recent call-ins and so forth. So we'll be making sure that we flag up items to you, and I think we'll start sending you an email once a week with the planner attached so that you can just keep sight of it as well, I think. So we make sure that we at least flag items up if they're in the planner. The next job will be making sure that things are on the planner. But yeah, we're working on that.
Chair, can I just remind you that Councillor Bond put an item in about the forward work programme? I must admit, I don't actually understand what it's asking. If somebody else does.
We understand. It was raised in P&O as well, so we're taking that forward. I think what Councillor Bond is asking is if the Cabinet and Council Forward Planner could have another column in it that would sort of say whether there are major implications for residents from whatever report is listed, so that it just helps us to understand if it's something that we would want to look at. So it's a fair point. We don't manage the Cabinet and Council Forward Planner, but I think we can certainly take that forward and make that suggestion. Okay?
Okay, yes, that's great. Thanks for that.
Councillor Howarth, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, Councillor Powell has also said something, so yeah, go on. Councillor Howarth first.
Yeah, we've got the County of Sanctuary strategy on there, which is going to Cabinet in September. That has just possibly gone on in the last couple of weeks there. Chair, that comes under our remit, doesn't it? I believe under the people scrutiny.
Yeah, that's the one I just mentioned, Councillor Howarth, the sanctuary report. That's what I thought you might be interested in. So that's the one that takes our 4 up to 5 if we were to do it on the 22nd of July, hence we'll do the 16th. But is there clear desire for members to look at that report?
Yeah.
I think it's the most important one, Chair, actually, out of them all. I know they're all important, but this is really important on the basis it's going to Cabinet, and if we don't look at it or we don't take any interest in it, and something's in there which members feel, oh gosh, we should have perhaps got hold of that, with a duty and responsibility to do that. So if that report is ready, perhaps get it out to us as quickly as possible, and perhaps then we can make sure that we shove it in one of them, in that meeting that we have on the perhaps we could go for an early after September meeting before Cabinet. I don't really, as long as we scrutinise it and have a look at it, I'm quite chilled about that one.
Lovely, thank you for that. Councillor Powell?
Yeah, it was only because you were talking about the sanctuary. Abergavenny Town of Sanctuary has won the National Sanctuary Award. I don't know if you knew that. Yeah, so that's good, isn't it?
It's wonderful, Maureen.
Excellent.
Okay, so moving on, confirming the minutes of the last meeting. Can I just raise an issue on the minutes. It says, Councillor Strong suggested reviewing council policies on inclusion, diversity and impact assessment, and it was noted that a strategic equality plan will be discussed in the meeting on the 22nd. I did say in the light of the Supreme Court judgment, so I just want that to be added in, if that's fine. Yeah, and I did make, because I watched back the recording, I did actually make reference to the First Minister making comments about guidance being issued from Welsh Government as well. So that's lovely. Anybody else with any points from the minutes? Are we happy to approve them?
Yes.
Yes. Lovely. Okay, that's great. So I've got all of that. And so the next thing is our next meeting is the joint one with P&O, and then we will be meeting on the 16th of July. Yeah. Can I thank everybody for their patience for me being my first meeting in the chair. We've had a very interesting meeting, and see you all fairly soon on the 9th. Thank you very much.
Well done, Jackie. Good first meeting.
Thanks, Jan.
You must be exhausted now, dear. Oops.